Chapter 1089. The god of war heaven blasting cannon sounded like an extremely bad *SS spell technique, and Lin felt like it was better to obtain it as soon as possible. In order to not attract Emperor Deng's attention, he would also choose to conceal his identity. In any case, as long as the other party hated him, there was no need to know his identity. All they had to do was interact with him face to face. There was still a lot of room for manipulation. And Lin left Tina and Dubai on the city wall as a precautionary measure. Then, he excitedly went to find enemies to vent his anger on. Su Xiaolan wanted to go with Lin. She had heard about Lin's tragic fate and felt that she was partly to blame. Thus, she volunteered to go with him. Xiaolan, why don't you not go? It's not safe enough, Lin said. You can say that when your defenses are stronger than mine. Su Xiaolan held the tortoise shell in front of her chest and raised her proud little face. And Lin, he really didn't expect that he would be the target of someone else's retaliation. All right, then let's go fight the blood tribe together. Don't get too carried away, and Lin reminded. You're the one who shouldn't get too carried away. Su Xiaolan rebuked. Then, she added, for safety's sake, let's only attack supreme beings of the return to void initial stage. That way, it'll be easier to escape. I think so too, and Lin nodded in agreement. He wasn't going to kill the blood tribe now. He was only going to complete that system mission. After completing it, he would run away. According to the information I've received, the closest return to Void Stage Supreme being to Lincoln City is the territory of the Bone Demon Blood Sect. The ancestor of the Bone Demon Blood Sect, Bulk, seems to be a supreme being of the return to Void Initial Stage. Before setting off, Su Xiaolan had requested a map of the Blood Tribe's territory from the Executive Department of the Celestial Court. All right, it'll be him then. Apart from super mighty beings of the Dao integration stage, and Lin had never been afraid of anyone. He could pick any opponent he wanted. The two of them quickly traveled toward the west. At this moment, night fell and the bright moon hung in the sky, in an area filled with white bones. The blood-red plants swayed in the wind, dripping a few drops of saliva from time to time. There were all kinds of pitch-black creatures breeding here. They were like masses of wriggling shadows. Most of them had sharp mouth parts, and they liked to suck all kinds of blood and life essence. Inside the incomparably huge skeleton, there were countless blood-sucking worms feeding on the bone marrow inside. The corrosive nature of the dark marshlands gave the creatures here thick skin, and their colors were all dark, so they definitely didn't look beautiful. On a tall mountain covered with bright, red, flesh-like plants, there was an incomparably huge skull of the bone demon standing at the top of the mountain. It was as if the mountain had an extra skull, and it looked very strange. This place was actually the Bone Demon Blood Sect's base. At night, the Bone Demon Blood Sect was holding a blood feast. Nighttime was the time when the vampires rejoiced. Two figures streaked across the sky, not even stirring up a breeze. And Lin relied on his extremely powerful divine sense to conceal himself and prevent detection. Meanwhile, Su Xiaolan had put on the illusionary star robe that Lin had given her. Her petite figure seemed to carry with it a sky full of starlight, and she seemed to be one with the stars in the sky. The robe fused with the environment. It could conceal one's aura to the greatest extent. It was an excellent stealth effect. And Lin felt that even if the enemy had a return to void final stage mighty figure, they wouldn't be able to discover them. Inside the bone demon's skull, in an extremely spacious hall, the red carpet was like fire. In the center of the hall, there was a crystal chandelier that looked like a blooming lotus flower, and its dazzling golden light illuminated the entire space. The decorations were extravagant and dazzling. Countless powerful beings of the blood tribe were gathered here. They were either hugging and dancing or raising their cups in celebration. The young sect leader, Starbucks, was in high spirits as he raised the cup of blood wine in his hand. Today is the 82nd blood tasting festival of our Bone Demon Blood Sect. We thank the distinguished guests of the Red Snow Sect, the Heavenly Scorpion Sect, and the 32 Sect for coming here to celebrate this festival together. Our main event, the blood auction, will be held in 2 hours. I hope everyone has a good time. Saying this, Starbucks emptied the cup of blood wine in his hand. The blood tribe cultivators in the hall all cheered and emptied their cups of blood wine. Starbucks walked off the stage. At this moment, a man with golden pupils and a black robe that concealed his entire face had already walked over. "My disciple," he said in a hoarse voice, "build a good relationship with the two sect leaders of the Red Snow sect and the Heavenly Scorpion sect, especially the Red Snow sect. That's a sect related to the new holy disciple." Starbucks nodded with a smile. "Don't worry, Master. I'll take care of this." The person standing before him was the ancestor of the Bone Demon Blood sect, Lord Burke, who was at the Return to Void initial stage. "Hey, what are you two talking about? I just sneezed. I think you guys weren't talking about me just now, right?" A beautiful, golden-haired woman dressed in a long red and white robe walked over gracefully. Her face was filled with seduction. She was the sect leader of the Red Snow sect, Eliza. Starbucks' expression didn't change. He retrieved a glass of red wine from his storage ring and walked toward the woman. Sect leader Eliza's beauty is unparalleled in the 9 southeastern regions. Master, and I naturally couldn't help but sigh in admiration at such a peerless beauty. Eliza accepted the glass of red wine upon hearing this. "Won't you blush when you praise me like this?" She gazed at Starbucks and took a sip of the red wine. Under the nourishment of the red wine, her lips became even more tender and alluring. "Actually, it's very easy to build a good relationship with me," Eliza said in a soft voice. An awkward expression appeared on Starbucks' face. He didn't think that Eliza would overhear their conversation. "You just have to give me that item you're auctioning. That way, our relationship will become extremely solid. Even tonight, I can accompany you and make you wish you were dead." As she spoke, Eliza's loose red and white robe slid down unconsciously, revealing her smooth, snow-white shoulders and half of her voluptuous Dubai bunnies. They were even rising and falling along with her breathing. If an ordinary person were to witness such a soul-stirring and alluring scene, they would probably vomit blood. Even Starbucks was momentarily dazed, and his heartbeat quickened. At this moment, the black-robed male appeared beside Starbucks. "Sect leader Eliza, there's only one item," he said calmly. "Many people from the various sects are also here for that item. For the sake of the sect's reputation, we can't go back on our word. Please forgive us." Eliza looked at the male who had suddenly appeared. She humphed lightly and turned to leave. Starbucks' interruption made her realize that she couldn't trick Starbucks anymore. The festivities continued, and the moment of the much-anticipated auction was about to begin. In a hidden corner, Lin and Su Xiaolan were observing the situation inside. They couldn't help but become excited. "We're rich. We're really rich this time," Lin exclaimed excitedly. He discovered that there were actually 4 supreme beings of the Return to Void stage present. Chapter 1090. "I'm just missing 4 Return to Void stage mighty figures who hate me. Now that I've come to the Bone Demon Blood sect, I've already discovered 4 Return to Void stage mighty figures. Could this be the will of the heavens?" And Lin's eyes were scorching, and he didn't conceal his excitement at all. Su Xiaolan shrank back beside Lin and reminded him in a low voice, "There are 4 Return to Void stage mighty figures. Aren't you worried that it'll be dangerous?" "Heh, there aren't even Return to Void final stage mighty figures. Who can harm me?" And Lin smiled confidently. Hearing this, Su Xiaolan didn't try to dissuade him anymore. Instead, she started to analyze the enemy's strength. There were over 1,000 Blood Tribe cultivators gathered in the hall. Their overall strength was very strong. There were over 200 Spirit Nurturing stage cultivators, 16 Soul Formation stage cultivators, and 4 Return to Void stage cultivators. The new sect leader of the Bone Demon Blood sect, Starbucks, was a newly advanced Return to Void stage mighty figure. Ancestor Bulk was a Return to Void initial stage mighty figure. The sect leader of the Heavenly Scorpion sect, Simpson, and the sect leader of the Red Snow sect, Eliza, were Return to Void intermediate stage mighty figures. This lineup could be considered the standard of a first-rate sect in the Kingdom of the 9 States. They're probably gathering so many powerful cultivators because they're holding some blood-tasting festival, Su Xiaolan said softly. Also, that auction seems to be very important to them. And Lin's divine sense was more powerful. Thus, he was able to gather more information. He nodded. That's indeed the case. There's something that seems to be very attractive to them. Then, let's wait a little longer. Su Xiaolan surveyed the situation in the hall with great interest. She really wanted to know what it was that could interest the Blood Tribe experts so much. And Lin also wanted to know what the Blood Tribe cultivators were going to give him. Why don't we sneak in? With so many sects, we won't be discovered, and Lin suddenly suggested. Our appearances won't do. Su Xiaolan was momentarily dazed. The Blood Tribe cultivators had more prominent facial features. Moreover, they usually had golden hair and crimson eyes. And Lin and Su Xiaolan were clearly Asian huskies. I have an idea. And Lin stretched out his hands, and a red and blue liquid began to appear. This was the first stage of the divine liquid creation art, the disguise technique. Water was ever-changing, so naturally, it could also change some of its attributes. And Lin wouldn't make too many changes. He would just change the color of his hair and eyes, and slightly modify the outline of his face to make it look more three-dimensional. Soon, the vampire versions of Lin and Su Xiaolan were born. Xiaolan, there's something wrong with your temperament. It's too noble and holy. It doesn't match the seductive temperament of a blood tribe woman. The blood race, should also have a temperament similar to mine. There are, but it's too rare. Once you appear, you'll definitely stand out. We want to sneak in with a low profile, not attract everyone's attention. Then what should we do? I can't learn to be flirtatious and flirtatious. How about this? Kiss me until you're aroused, and that feeling will come. Rogue. Not long later, two spirit-nurturing, stage blood tribe cultivators walked into the hall hand in hand. The male was dressed in a white robe, and his footsteps were steady. His crimson eyes shone brightly, and there was a hint of carefreeness in his expression. The female held onto the male's arm, and her wavy golden hair hung down to her waist. There was a hint of red on her intricate and beautiful face, and she appeared quite seductive. The two of them made their way to the banquet table, and they were a little dazed as they stared at the table full of food. That's right, they were the blood tribe versions of Lin and Su Xiaolan. The food on the table was all types of livers, eyeballs, and liquid essences. They were all beautifully made, and the colors were beautiful, but they were all F*King raw. Furthermore, most of these organs seemed to have been extracted from the bodies of highly intelligent beings. On the table, there were even light-winged clans, hot and sour wings that had been plucked and cut into pieces. A certain blood tribe male was using a knife and fork to eat with gusto, but Lin and Su Xiaolan couldn't bring themselves to eat at all. These things were so disgusting that they wanted to puke. Could it be that their persona was about to collapse as soon as they stepped onto the stage? Hey, beautiful lady, may I have the honor of having a drink with you? A handsome man with golden hair walked over with a smile on his face as he looked at Su Xiaolan. There was no helping it. No matter which version of Su Xiaolan she was in, she was always too beautiful. I'm afraid that won't be possible. She's my Dao partner. And Lin wrapped his arm around Su Xiaolan's slender waist with a smile. The handsome man's smile didn't falter, and he pointed at the blood tribe female who was tasting some blood wine nearby. That's my Dao partner. Are you interested in swapping? Not interested, and Lin replied in a cold voice. At the same time, he was secretly accumulating power, ready to kill this man with a single punch. At this moment, a blood tribe male nearby seemed to have heard their conversation, and he walked over before pointing at a female who was dancing with another man with a smile on his face. She's my Dao partner. Are you interested in swapping? The handsome man glanced at the female, and an interested expression appeared on his face as he nodded. Sure. The two of them left together, chatting and laughing with one another. And Lin and Su Xiaolan both drew a sharp intake of breath in unison. How could such a question be asked in public? Were all blood tribe cultivators this open-minded? Or were the blood tribe cultivators gathered here more open-minded? And Lin suddenly felt like his servant, Cassidy, was a pure and untainted lotus flower. She was a little sexy, but she was still quite normal. Su Xiaolan furrowed her brows. This place is so disgusting. It's disgusting in every sense of the word. And Lin nodded in agreement. He picked up a glass of red wine and brought it to his nose, upon which the alluring scent of blood intermingled with the faint aroma of wine wafted toward him. This type of blood wine smelled quite good, but he didn't know what kind of craftsmanship had been used to concoct it. Even the life essence had been preserved and fermented to an extremely high degree. And Lin and Su Xiaolan chatted idly off to the side, and they would occasionally overhear some discussions. They also heard that the 3 holy disciples of the blood tribe were going to come out of seclusion soon. However, these were all rumors, and there was no concrete information. During this time, a blood tribe female cultivator came over to ask Su Xiaolan if she was interested in swapping Dao partners for the night, and she kept glancing toward Lin as she spoke. Su Xiaolan couldn't help but ask, "What are you after? My Dao partner isn't as handsome as yours." And Lin, huh? The blood tribe female was clearly taken aback. Didn't holy disciple Cassidy say this a year ago? The fusion of different types of blood can stimulate one's heart and Dao realm, thereby increasing the probability of attaining Dao enlightenment. The life of a blood tribe cultivator should be the pursuit of blood. If we swap blood at night, different types of yin blood and yang blood will complement each other, and we'll definitely be able to attain different enlightenment. This has already been proven to be feasible. By the way, don't you guys know this? The blood tribe female looked at Lin and Su Xiaolan as if they were country bumpkins. So switching one for the night was referring to swapping blood with someone else? Su Xiaolan and Lin were astonished. They had just thought that Cassidy was a pure and untainted lotus flower, but now she was telling them that she was the source of all this evil. Was this some kind of F*King Bullsh** T from being addicted to Lin's blood? Did the blood tribe cultivators misunderstand Cassidy's words? It doesn't matter if you didn't know. It's good that you know now. Do you want to give it a try? Even though this big brother's power level is average, he seems to be in high spirits. His blood should taste quite good. The blood tribe female winked at Lin before licking her lips. Do you want a date tonight, handsome? And Lin shook his head. No, I'm afraid you won't be able to handle my blood. He was speaking the truth. The Poison Lord's reputation wasn't just for show. His blood could already poison blood tribe cultivators below the return to void intermediate stage to death. Oh ho ho, I'm so scared. The female giggled as she patted her massive chest. Su Xiaolan's expression darkened. She was just about to draw her sword and slash this seductive *TCH. At this moment, a loud and clear voice suddenly sounded. Esteemed guests, the time has come. The blood-tasting festival auction will officially begin. A tall platform began to rise from the center of the hall. A blue enchantment barrier appeared and engulfed the platform. This was an enchantment barrier that could block the attacks of return to void stage mighty figures. The sect leader of the Bone Demon Blood sect, Starbucks, appeared at the center of the platform to host the entire auction. Just like that, the blood tribe female's life was spared. Over 1,000 blood tribe cultivators all focused their attention on the tall platform. The much-anticipated auction had officially begun. Chapter 1091. Starbucks shone brightly on the stage. Beside him was a huge piece of red cloth that completely covered him, maintaining the mysteriousness of the item being auctioned. Burke sat not too far away from the auction stage, exuding a cold and gloomy aura that no one could approach. The Red Snow Sect's Eliza's group and the Heavenly Scorpion Sect's Simpson's group sat at the very front. There were also a few representatives from first-rate sects who were not present but were still seated slightly behind them. After that, there were 2 rings, 3 rings, 4 rings, and Lin and Su Xiaolan mingled with some ordinary blood tribe sects and silently watched the show. The most important part of the blood-tasting festival is here. Next, I will reveal the first auction item, the Abyss Lightning Bat from the 10,000 Demon Cave. Starbucks suddenly lifted the red cloth. A pitch-black bat about 30 feet in size with blue lightning patterns all over its body appeared in front of everyone. Its entire body was pierced with strange silver tubes, and dark red blood was flowing along the silver tubes. The blood slowly flowed along a certain path, converged, and finally landed on a glass apparatus. The bat's body was still moving up and down slightly. It trembled as if it was crying out in pain. And Lin frowned. This bat, it's still alive. Starbucks caressed the bat's face and said passionately, "This abyss lightning bat is at the soul formation intermediate stage. In order to maintain its blood's activity, it's sealed and not dead. When its blood first enters the mouth, it feels like it's going to explode. After that, the taste will be smooth and refreshing, extremely fragrant. The life essence contained in its blood has even reached A grade. The amount of blood stored in its body is 1 ton. The starting price is 100,000 spirit stones. I will bring out some samples for everyone to taste before starting the auction." Starbucks waved his hand, and countless drops of blood flew into the empty wine glasses that the Blood Tribe members had prepared beforehand. Everyone had a share. The blood tasting festival was actually the blood tasting during the auction, right? And Lin fell silent as he looked at the dark red sticky blood in the wine glass. At this moment, sounds of moaning and exclaiming could be heard beside him. Very soon, the auction began. The blood of this abyss lightning bat at the soul formation intermediate stage was sold for a price of 180,000 spirit stones. It was won by a soul formation final stage sect leader. As for the people of the Red Snow sect and Heavenly Scorpion sect, they did not even participate in the bidding. Clearly, they were not very interested in the blood. The next few auctioned items were all exotic beasts of the same level. In the end, a half-naked creature with a pair of black wings and a body covered in bloody scars appeared on the stage. It was tied to a wooden frame and was on its last breath. Lin and Su Xiaolan were both shocked. The Blood Tribe was really bold. They really dared to auction anything. The auction seemed to have reached its climax. Starbucks beamed with joy. As everyone can see, this is a soul formation final stage Darkwing Tribe spirit. If one were to ask what kind of highly intelligent creatures were the hardest to capture in this world, it's not the powerful Lightwing clan that would rather die than submit, nor is it the elusive Vermilion Bird clan. It's the Darkwing clan that fears death the most. I'm sure everyone is very interested in the blood of a Darkwing race elite, right? It was different from the clear and sweet blood of the Lightwing clan. On the contrary, it was a deep and boundless mellow fragrance. I believe that everyone will like it after tasting the blood. Starbucks waved his hand, and the blood dripped onto the wine cups of the Blood Tribe cultivators. There was only 1 drop of blood. After all, the Darkwing Tribe cultivators were built like humans, and they didn't have much blood in their bodies. However, when the Blood Tribe cultivators tasted this drop of blood, they all revealed intoxicated expressions. The evil-slaying sword in Lin's storage ring started to tremble. It actually had an extremely strong urge to kill. This was the first time it had voluntarily expressed this desire to Lin. He hurriedly suppressed this urge. "What are you doing, little Xia?" Lin communicated with the evil-slaying sword in his mind. "I want to kill someone." The evil-slaying sword's cold voice sounded in his mind. Lin faltered for a moment. A certain speculation suddenly surged into his mind. The evil-slaying sword was once a top-tier immortal tool that the Dark Knight monarch yearned for. You want to save that Darkwing Tribe elite? Lin was shocked. Even so, we still have to wait. Now is not the time. When the time comes, I'll help you kill him. Lin felt like he had said something very domineering. However, the evil-slaying sword said indifferently, "I think you've misunderstood something. I just want to kill that Darkwing Tribe cultivator. That's all." Lin. This turn was too sudden, and Lin was a little dazed. At this moment, the Darkwing Tribe elite had already started the auction. Just the starting price alone was 500,000 spirit stones. Even so, there were still many sects participating in the auction, and the atmosphere was extremely lively. Many mighty figures in the Blood Tribe relied on absorbing the life essence of other living beings to become stronger. In their eyes, this Darkwing Tribe powerful being was perhaps an extremely rare elixir. In the end, this Darkwing Tribe elite was sold for 1,080,000 spirit stones. The person who won the auction was the sect leader of the Heavenly Scorpion sect, Simpson. He was a golden-haired male with silver muscles and a face full of knife scars. Right at this moment, an even more impassioned voice sounded. Now, the most important item of the entire auction is about to begin. Starbucks flew to the center of the stage, his face flushed with excitement. The item that you've all been waiting for is about to be auctioned. Just a simple sentence was enough to make all of the Blood Tribe cultivators' breathing become much heavier. This auction is being controlled by a being of unimaginable status. I've already investigated all of you, but I still hope that all of you can swear hard oaths to keep this auction a secret. All of the Blood Tribe cultivators swore their oaths as soon as Starbucks finished speaking. And Lin and Su Xiaolan also swore their oaths. In any case, it wasn't a problem if they didn't violate their oaths. All they had to do was kill all of these people. After swearing their oaths, Starbucks announced the most explosive piece of news. The next item is a supreme treasure that Holy Disciple Cassidy obtained from the Holy Land of our ancestors. It is a supreme treasure that can allow us to observe the true meaning of life and grant us limitless potential. His words sent shockwaves surging through the crowd. And Lin and Su Xiaolan were completely dumbstruck. It was Cassidy again? Huh? Why did she say again? Just the title of Holy Disciple alone was enough to make that treasure extremely dazzling. All of the Blood Tribe cultivators began to look forward to that treasure. Today is the Blood Tasting Festival, so the item being auctioned naturally has something to do with blood. However, there's no tasting this time, as there's only one drop. That's right, it's a drop of the Holy Patriarch's blood. It can purify our bodies and elevate our life to a higher level, allowing the blood in our bodies to become closer to the Holy Patriarch's blood. Everyone was shocked upon hearing this. The significance it represented was extremely profound, and its value was immeasurable. The Holy Patriarch's blood was blood that could allow them to evolve. If all of this was true, then almost no Blood Tribe cultivator would be able to resist this temptation. Under everyone's expectant gazes, Starbucks' storage ring flashed, and a drop of blood hovered in midair. It was enveloped by a terrifying barrier to prevent any accidents from occurring. However, the aura and ripples of that drop of blood spread throughout the entire hall. Su Xiaolan was momentarily dazed, and she looked toward the man beside her. And Lin was completely dumbstruck, as if he was looking at something extremely absurd. After a moment, he murmured to himself, "Isn't that my King blood?" Chapter 1092. And Lin's perception of his own blood would never be wrong. Even Xiaolan could sense a familiar aura from this blood. Thus, both of them were dumbstruck. Incredulity and astonishment mixed in their hearts. The supreme treasure of the Blood Tribe that I've been looking forward to is actually a drop of my blood. And Lin's eyes widened as he murmured to himself. Su Xiaolan massaged her brows and couldn't help but chuckle. Perhaps it really is a supreme treasure to the Blood Tribe. She was aware of how Cassidy, Merlin, and Tobias had been subdued by Enlin. Thus, even though she was very surprised, it didn't seem to be too surprising. Enlin was a little disappointed. He had wanted to rob them of the supreme treasure, but it turned out that he was going to rob them of a drop of his blood? What a joke. However, after thinking about it, it made perfect sense. His blood was indeed immeasurably beneficial to the Blood Tribe. The fact that Cassidy, Merlin, and Tobias had all become holy disciples due to his blood was proof of this. Why was Cassidy doing this? She was extremely bloodthirsty, so there was no way she would give her blood to someone else. A thought flashed through in Lin's mind. Could it be that she's recruiting subordinates for me, subduing them with their blood before recommending them to me? There was another basis for this conjecture. Only returned to void intermediate stage mighty figures or above could withstand his blood. Furthermore, Eliza and Simpson just so happened to be returned to void intermediate stage mighty figures. Perhaps this wasn't a coincidence. Lin could already envision Cassidy bringing the Blood Tribe mighty figures here and pointing at him to tell them that this was their holy leader. Then, the Blood Tribe mighty figures would be completely dumbstruck, and Lin and Su Xiaolan weren't interested in the blood at all. However, all the Blood Tribe mighty figures seemed to have fallen into a collective climax as they discussed excitedly, praised, and yearned for it. Even the return to Void Stage Eliza and Simpson had expressions of yearning on their faces. The Blood Tribe was extremely sensitive to blood, and they could sense that this drop of blood was extraordinary. That's enough. Hurry up and auction it off. Eliza's delicate body trembled slightly. Her dark red eyes were burning with desire, and her fair face was flushed with excitement. A smug smile appeared on Starbuck's face as he said in a clear voice, "This drop of holy patriarch blood is extremely precious. For us Blood Tribe cultivators, consuming a single drop is even more effective than consuming a high-rank immortal pill. Cassidy, the Holy Son, will vouch for this blood, and you'll definitely feel good after using it. The starting price is 1,000,000 spirit stones." The crowd burst into an uproar as soon as he said that. This was just a drop of blood. The starting price of a single drop of blood was even higher than that of a Darkwing clan member of the Soul Formation final stage, which was extremely difficult to capture. Should I say, as expected of the sacred ancestors' blood? The vampires were very shocked, but they wouldn't refute this price. Su Xiaolan secretly pinched in Lin's arm and chuckled, "Your blood is really valuable." And Lin didn't say anything, but his eyes shone brightly. "I think I've discovered a new continent to make money." Su Xiaolan, "You want to sell your blood?" Su Xiaolan stared at Lin with a speechless expression. "That's right." And Lin's eyes shone brightly. "Selling my blood for money and developing my subordinates at the same time. Heh, Cassidy really is a genius. I'll have as much Holy Patriarch blood as you want. At the same time, I'll limit the supply. After all, the rarer something is, the greater its value. Even something like a diamond can be turned into an extremely precious treasure. Why can't my Holy Patriarch blood be sold for an astronomical price? Furthermore, my blood is really very effective for the Blood Tribe." Su Xiaolan rolled her eyes. "Do you really think you're the Holy Patriarch? Only Cassidy and the others can enter the Blood Tribe Holy Land anyway. So whatever they say goes. No one can prove that my blood isn't the Holy Patriarch's blood." And Lin smiled smugly. Su Xiaolan was a little worried. "It'll be very dangerous to continue like this. If we accidentally catch the attention of the higher-ups," and Lin nodded. "It's better to be safe than sorry. We'll think about this when we get back." Right at this moment, the blood was already being auctioned off by the Blood Tribe. Powerful beings at the Soul Formation pinnacle stage for medium-sized sects also joined the bidding. However, they soon stopped bidding because they didn't have that much money. Some sect leaders even borrowed money from the people around them in order to bid for this drop of blood, no matter what. However, Simpson and Eliza were the ones who had the highest chance of winning. As returned to Void Stage mighty figures, they had already prepared sufficient funds for this auction. The auction reached its climax. Eliza and Simpson's eyes were bloodshot from bidding, and Lin couldn't help but marvel at Cassidy's brilliant strategy. She had purposely arranged for two return to Void intermediate stage mighty figures to compete against each other. Not only would they obtain talents, but they would also be able to obtain a huge amount of wealth due to the competition. It was a win-win situation. In the end, this drop of blood was won by Simpson for 8,000,000 spirit stones. Compared to the starting price, it had almost doubled. What a foolish person with a lot of money. No, this was the pursuit of life and Tao. A smile appeared on Lin's face. "Xiaolan, get ready." Su Xiaolan nodded silently and prepared for battle. "Next, let's welcome sect leader Simpson onto the stage to receive the Holy Leader's blood." Starbucks said excitedly to the bustling crowd below the stage. Right at this moment, a black figure suddenly appeared in front of him. It wasn't Simpson. Instead, it was a complete stranger. Starbuck's expression changed. The person before him was simply too fast. What followed next was a huge golden fist that made his heart palpitate. It was too fast. He couldn't dodge it. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion erupted. The new sect leader of the Bone Demon Blood sect, Starbucks, was sent flying by a single punch. The person who had attacked was the blood tribe version of Enlin. He was already standing on the stage. Below the stage were over 1,000 blood tribe cultivators who were momentarily stunned. How dare you snatch the holy leader's blood? Simpson, who had finally managed to obtain the blood, instantly exploded. He stood up and was about to attack. Don't panic, Mr. Simpson. This blood is enveloped by an extremely powerful protective barrier. Even a return to void final stage mighty figure won't be able to break through it in a short period of time. Bulk, the ancestor of the Bone Demon blood sect, was still extremely calm. However, his explosively rising aura made everyone feel suffocated. It was clear that he was extremely angry at this moment. Boom! Another loud noise rang out. The barrier enveloping the blood was broken. The white glow of the divine inspection technique flashed in Enlin's eyes. He tossed the blood into his mouth and tasted it. Hee, as expected of the holy leader's blood. It's amazing. That's right, this is my blood. It's true, Simpson. Bulk. Simpson looked at Bulk expressionlessly. Didn't you say that even a return to void, final stage mighty figure won't be able to break through it in a short period of time? This supreme being felt like he had been played. Guards, don't let him escape. Capture him. Bulk roared angrily. The sect protection formation was activated at the same time. Countless powerful blood tribe cultivators unleashed their powerful auras. In the vast hall, the killing intent was like the sea, almost tearing open the huge dome. Ding, ding, ding. 3 pleasing sounds traveled over. Simpson +1, Bulk +1, Starbucks +1. Ayaya, you're too polite. You actually assisted 3 people at once. And Lin's lips curled up into an arrogant smile. He slowly pulled out his evil slaying sword. Facing the soul formation stage cultivators and return to void stage mighty figures, he said with battle intent in his eyes, "Now, let me turn this world upside down." Chapter 1093. The golden-haired, crimson-eyed woman in a green dress descended gracefully and stepped onto the hilt of her sword. This was the terrifying aura of a return to void stage mighty figure. Starbucks was extremely confident. He was a newly advanced return to void stage mighty figure. How could he not be able to deal with a soul formation stage cultivator? Even if it was a battle of attrition, he could still exhaust her to death. Right at this moment, blue lightning and white flames suddenly intertwined. They carried with them a terrifying might as they swept across the stage in the hall. The booms sounded like the roar of a true dragon, and Lin's storage ring flashed, and the completely repaired Gundam 3 in Yao Ji appeared once again. The cyan body that looked like a solid dragon coiled around the woman's body and blocked the sword thrust. All the blood tribe cultivators felt chills run down their spines upon seeing this. I've said before, anyone who crosses this line will die. The battle had only just begun, and more than half of the blood tribe cultivators were already dead. She no longer had any reservations. A speck of red light flew out from the blood tribe cultivator's body and landed in Su Xiaolan's palm. Enlin no longer paid any attention to the mighty figure who hated him. He turned his gaze toward Eliza, who had failed the auction and didn't hate him as much. Right at this moment, a sense of danger suddenly welled up in his heart. Whoosh! Blood splattered through the air. F***CK off. A golden glow flashed across Burke's eyes, and a golden dragon roared out. Courting death. Starbucks sneered. Many blood tribe cultivators didn't dare to cross that crack anymore. Powerful beings clad in blood-colored robes charged toward Enlin's battle. Her sword was like a lightning dragon, and white flames roared as she reaped the lives of the blood tribe cultivators. Almost no one was a match for her. The powerful blood tribe cultivators of the soul formation stage were insta-killed by her sword. Countless powerful spell techniques collided and destroyed the entire hall beyond recognition. The crimson sword projection left a domineering trajectory in the air. Its speed was as fast as lightning. The unstoppable sword projection stopped in front of Su Xiaolan. The domain around him instantly expanded, and countless venomous, demonic scorpions roamed around him, bearing their bloodthirsty fangs. Boom, boom, boom. Su Xiaolan smiled faintly. She had only done that to divert the Blood Kindred's firepower. She didn't say that she wouldn't kill anyone who didn't cross the line. All living beings that came into contact with these terrifying lightning and flames, regardless of whether they were spirit-nurturing stage powerful beings or soul formation stage powerful beings, were instantly charred black. At this time, Little Temptress was already locked in combat with Simpson. Su Xiaolan stepped forward, and as she twisted her waist, a sword projection imbued with the power of the holy flame materialized into a curved arc that enveloped all of the Blood Tribe living beings. Then, the shock and fear on the Blood Tribe members' face froze. Umph! How dare a mere soul formation stage cultivator act so arrogantly here? A Blood Tribe cultivator at the soul formation stage roared as he pounced towards Su Xiaolan. The sacred fire could incinerate heaven and earth, and the poisonous demon scorpions would melt upon contact. At this moment, a lightning and fire dual dragon sparrow sword descended from the sky. Shadow, Scorpion Domain. Eliza, who was at the return to Void Intermediate stage, was his true target. Starbucks had chosen to wait and see from the start. After confirming that this woman was with that man, he decided to target the weaker ones. He would either kidnap or kill this woman to intimidate his opponents. A blood-red sword projection suddenly pierced toward her from a certain angle. The powerful sword projection tore through her holy flame barrier and pierced toward her chest. If he couldn't defeat her alone, he could always gain the upper hand by ganging up on her. Holy Flame, Flight of the Vermilion Bird. The powerful beings of the Bone Demon Blood Sect also sprang into action. They pounced toward Enlin, planning to use spell techniques to restrain Enlin and create an opportunity for them to fight. Ding! This was the true meaning of one man holds the pass against 10,000 enemies. She was like an inexhaustible god of slaughter. All the powerful beings of the Blood Tribe who passed through the crack in the ground were instantly slain by her dragon sparrow sword. Su Xiaolan's voice was cold, but it was filled with power. Su Xiaolan's sword descended at an even faster speed. Starbucks had no way of dodging it. The sect leader of the Bone Demon Blood Sect, Starbucks, had finally made his move. However, there were still many frenzied Blood Tribe cultivators who chose to charge towards Su Xiaolan after a short while. A violent explosion erupted. The battle was extremely brutal. One Blood Tribe cultivator after another fell to the ground as they screamed in agony. They all became ghosts under the green-clothed woman's sword. D***. Why is this metal puppet so powerful? Simpson's body was covered in silver muscles. He was extremely proud of his powerful body, but even after blocking Su Xiaolan's sword strike, a bloody gash instantly appeared on his body. The blade of the sword pierced into the ground, creating a massive crack in the ground. We clearly didn't cross the line. Why are you still trying to kill us? Some of the powerful beings of the other sects who were spectating from afar were also affected by the spell techniques, and they began to wail in agony. Gundam 3's fist was enshrouded by a golden energy halo, and he also unleashed a punch. His face was still red and swollen from Enlin's mountain-quaking fist, but his aura wasn't weak at all. In an instant, the power of the Blood Tribe cultivators surged toward him like a tidal wave. They cleverly stood in the distance and used long-range spell techniques to attack. Buck, Simpson, and Eliza pounced toward Enlin almost at the same time. The woman in front of them was only an extremely powerful soul formation stage cultivator. She wasn't a return to void stage cultivator, so how could she suppress a large group of Blood Tribe cultivators by herself? A white sword projection flashed past. Su Xiaolan absorbed the red light, and a healthy flush appeared on her face. Her life force was replenished, and her aura seemed to have become stronger as well. At this moment, Enlin was already pouncing toward Eliza with his sword in hand. What? Starbucks' eyes widened in disbelief. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. This core cultivation method that he had inherited from war god Xing Tian's Tao of Slaughter seemed to be quite useful. Specks of red light leaped out from the corpses of the Blood Tribe cultivators and landed on Su Xiaolan's body. Not only did Su Xiaolan not feel tired during the battle, but she also became more and more courageous, and her aura became more and more terrifying. It was as if a vermilion bird had descended from the heavens and glided through the sky. Everything on the ground was engulfed by the scorching sword flames, and countless Blood Tribe cultivators wailed in agony. Boom, boom, boom. The Blood Tribe cultivators became more and more fearful as they fought. The number of Blood Tribe cultivators who had died at the hands of the woman in green had already exceeded 200, but her aura didn't weaken in the slightest. Bam! The dragon sparrow sword rose into the air. Who's there? All of the Blood Tribe cultivators' expressions changed drastically as they all stopped in their tracks. The sword projection pierced toward the woman, but she didn't dodge. Gundam 3 and Burke were both blasted back over 100 meters by the shockwave. Is this the divine killer aura? She stood proudly at the forefront of the Blood Tribe cultivators with a smile on her face. Boom! The golden energy formed a vibrating halo that expanded outward. Su Xiaolan wielded her dragon sparrow sword and transformed the area within a radius of over a kilometer into a sea of holy flames. An extremely sharp sword projection slashed through the air. He didn't even get a chance to say anything before his body was sliced in half, and his vast life force was also completely severed. Hold her off. She won't be able to hold on for much longer. A Blood Tribe cultivator yelled. Anyone who crosses this line shall die. 3 extremely terrifying auras erupted forth. Gundam 3 pounced toward Burke at an extremely fast speed. Gundam 3, hold Burke off for me. Yao Ji, hold Simpson off for me. Although all of the Blood Tribe cultivators were powerful and bloodthirsty, they were still intimidated by the auras radiating from the trio. Chapter 1094. Look, Master Starbucks has finally made his move. Haha, look at that Demoness. She's frozen in fear. Air. Master Starbucks has been slain. The Blood Tribe cultivators felt as if they were on a roller coaster. Seeing Starbucks make his move was like seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. In the next second, the mighty Starbucks was slain by the green-robed female. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and help. A powerful Blood Tribe cultivator roared. Su Xiaolan smiled faintly as she looked at the Blood Tribe cultivators charging toward her. She wielded her dragon sparrow sword and charged toward the Blood Tribe cultivators. On the ground, Starbucks, who had been ignored by Su Xiaolan, struggled to his feet as the bloody wound on his chest slowly healed. Don't look down on me. I'm going to kill you, he roared. Starbucks wielded his crimson sword and continued charging towards Su Xiaolan. Spatial seal. He was an idiot. He knew that he couldn't gain the upper hand in terms of techniques. Thus, he used a spatial spell technique that was almost against the rules. This was the absolute suppression that a return to Void Stage mighty figure could use against a low-rank cultivator. Su Xiaolan was still brandishing her sword when her body was suddenly sealed by a boundless spatial power. It was as if she had been frozen in mid-air. Starbuck's crimson sword whistled through the air. Ha! I'm going to show you what it means to Shattering Sun, Su Xiaolan suddenly roared. A white glow unique to holy beasts burst forth from her body, and boundless energy surged forth, stirring up the surrounding space. She didn't know anything about spatial power. However, as long as one's power reached the pinnacle, one could still break through the spatial seal through sheer power alone. This was using brute force to break through technique. Then, under Starbuck's astonished gaze, Su Xiaolan turned around, and an azure dragon revolved around her body. Boom! His sword once again struck the azure dragon barrier. Starbucks. This scene was extremely similar. Su Xiaolan's sword fell. This time, her aura was so sharp that it almost sliced Starbuck's body in half. Originally, I wanted to keep you alive to increase the quest value for that guy's cultivation technique. Why do you have to run over here? Su Xiaolan said with a displeased expression. Starbucks spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed to the ground, a look of confusion on his face. What is this woman saying? Why can't I understand a single word? Another earth-shattering explosion rang out. The sect-protecting grand formation had been broken. The ceiling of the entire lobby was suddenly blasted apart by a towering flame. the territory of the Bone Demon blood sect. The gigantic skull of the Bone Demon at the top of the mountain was sent flying just like that. Blood seeped out from the corner of Burke's mouth. He had been severely injured by the backlash from the spell formation. Never had he imagined that the sect-protecting grand formation that he had prepared for a long time would actually be destroyed by Enlin with a single finger. At this moment, Gundam 3 was already upon them, and its super particle sword slashed through the air in a series of lethal trajectories. At the same time, Simpson, a mighty figure of the Return to Void intermediate stage, was also completely suppressed by Yao Ji. Before he knew it, he had already been struck over 100 times. If it weren't for the fact that the Blood Tribe had extremely powerful regenerative abilities, he might have already died. High up in the sky, Enlin was entangled by the 6 divine flames and the holy vermilion flame. A crimson-golden glow appeared all over his body, and every attack he unleashed was as explosive as fire. Break! Enlin, who was in his fire god mode, punched toward Eliza's crimson shield. Following a crisp explosion, the crimson shield shattered. However, Enlin's fist didn't stop there. It continued to smash into Eliza's body with unstoppable force. Eliza's body caved in, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Who on earth are you? Aren't you afraid that holy disciple Cassidy will send you to the soul blood purgatory in her rage? Eliza's hair was disheveled, and she roared threateningly. I'm really not afraid. Enlin chuckled and continued to attack. Eliza was no match for Enlin, who had activated his fire god mode. She was instantly smashed into retreat. Enlin's eruption of flames lit up the entire starry sky. It was as if the sun had risen in the night sky, and it continued to crash toward Eliza. Bam! There was another explosion. Eliza was sent plummeting toward the ground. Enlin flashed above her and delivered another punch. Boom! A gigantic fist imprint instantly appeared on the craggy mountain. Eliza's body was riddled with wounds, and she panted heavily as she knelt on the ground. Her enemy was too powerful, and she didn't have much of a chance to retaliate. Enlin slowly descended, and the flames gradually receded. He pulled out his evil slaying sword. He looked at Eliza in confusion. Then, he looked at his system, and the confusion on his face deepened. Strange. Why are there still 9 supreme beings who hate me? I've already tortured Eliza to this extent, and she still doesn't hate me? That shouldn't be the case. Enlin looked at Eliza, who was riddled with wounds. I'm going to kill you, he said in a probing voice. Eliza tightened her slightly tattered red and white robe. Come on, she snorted lightly. Enlin charged over, and a pitch-black sword projection pierced through the clouds. Eliza gritted her teeth. She wielded the power of frost and snow in one hand and the power of blood in the other. She transformed into 2 terrifyingly powerful dragons that roared and pounced toward Enlin. Another earth-shattering collision sound rang out. Eliza was once again forced back by the power of the sword projection, and she vomited blood. Wind sword. Enlin unfurled his wings of wind, and his speed was as fast as a ghost. He instantly appeared in front of Eliza, and his sword descended once again. Splat! Her red and white robe was torn apart, and a dark red wound appeared on her snow-white skin. Blood splattered everywhere, and Eliza tumbled to the ground once again. She looked extremely miserable. Enlin glanced at his system again. Eliza's name list hadn't appeared yet. He was a little gloomy. He charged toward Eliza and slashed again. Ah! Eliza moaned, and blood splattered everywhere. She clutched her robe that was about to be torn apart by Enlin and collapsed to the ground. Her slender legs were crossed, and she trembled in fear. The next sword strike will be the day of your death, Enlin said with a murderous aura. Hey, don't worry. Big brother, do you still want to live after offending the holy disciple? You'll definitely come down and accompany me. Eliza raised her head and said seductively. Enlin looked toward his system again, unwilling to give up. *T. She's about to die, so why doesn't she hate me? Why don't you hate me? Enlin couldn't hold it in anymore, and he asked. Eliza was momentarily dazed upon hearing this. Then, She gritted her teeth and said, "Of course I do. How can I not hate you? Not only did you steal my treasure, but you also tried to kill me." And Lynn was completely dazed. She looked like she really hated him. Could it be that her injuries weren't severe enough? And Lynn pounced toward her again, and his evil-slaying sword slashed out with an astonishing sword projection. Eliza unleashed a spell technique with all her might to defend herself, but she was still no match for Lynn in the end. Another gash appeared on her body, and she retreated with a wretched cry. And Lynn pursued her relentlessly, and he slashed out with his sword again. Eliza let out a delicate cry as a bloody gash appeared on her snow-white thigh. Wind sword, and Lynn broke through Eliza's snow crystal barrier and slashed out with his sword again. Eliza let out a delicate cry as another gash appeared on her lower abdomen. Her robe was torn, and her breasts were revealed. And Lynn continued to slash out with his sword. Eliza let out a delicate cry as another bloody gash appeared on her chest. "So annoying. Why did you slash me here?" The woman's face was flushed, and her eyes were filled with anger. And Lynn silently stopped his attacks. "This style? Is there something wrong with it?" He turned his gaze toward Eliza. This blood tribe supreme being with her tattered robe and bloodstains all over her body actually had a peculiar flush on her face. Her breathing quickened, and it seemed as if she had become even more excited. "Come on, come and bully me. I won't yield." Eliza let out a delicate cry as her large breasts shook. She was extremely excited as she took the initiative to attack Lynn. And Lynn felt like he had discovered the truth. He discovered the truth as to why this woman's hatred never reached a certain level. This Eliza, she's probably a masochist. Chapter 1095. Eliza was a masochist, and Lynn was shocked by this discovery. This would explain why Eliza didn't hate Lynn, even though he was torturing her all this time. That was because the pain she had suffered had become the source of her joy. At this moment, Eliza was like an unkillable cockroach. She stood up again and materialized a blood saber and a snow saber. She slashed at Lynn in a frenzy. Streaks of red and white saber projections crisscrossed, tearing the mountains and earth into pieces. It was as if winter had descended upon heaven and earth. "Ha ha ha! Why aren't you attacking? Are you afraid of me?" Eliza laughed coquettishly as she attacked incessantly. Her crimson eyes flickered with excitement and a hint of anticipation. "Are you Astor's king done?" And Lynn was enraged. The endless night sword technique appeared again, turning the sky into a black screen that covered the stars and moon. His sword projection was extremely domineering. With a horizontal slash, it directly slashed through Eliza's saber projections. Then, another slash landed on Eliza's body. Eliza let out a delicate cry. Her robe was torn open, revealing a large patch of her snow-white skin. A sword wound appeared, and blood splattered. The woman kept retreating, but the redness on her face became even more obvious. She panted lightly and said, "What a domineering slash! What a domineering aura!" And Lynn, at this moment, he really wanted to shout F***. Then, the most important question was, how could he make a severe masochist hate him? The battle continued, and Lynn switched from offense to defense again. He was having a headache now. Facing this special blood tribe mighty figure, he actually felt a sense of helplessness. He had no idea how to deal with her. Torture her? She would be very happy. If he didn't torture her, she would also be very happy when she hit him. In any case, she wouldn't hate him. And Lynn suddenly realized that if he disregarded the mission and looked at this woman, she seemed rather cute. No matter how he treated her, she wouldn't hate him. Ha! What's wrong? Can't hold on any longer? The more Eliza fought, the more excited she became. She couldn't care less about the exposed parts of her clothes that were torn apart. Her attacks with the two long blades became increasingly swift and fierce. "See? No matter how many times you injure me, my powerful life force will be able to recover from those injuries. If we fight a protracted battle, I might not lose. Forget it. I'll just treat a dead horse as a living one." And Lynn sneered. "Do you really think I can't beat you? What comes next is the climax. He glared fiercely at Eliza. I want you to cry. Endless sorrow suddenly surged up, and tears streamed down Eliza's face. Woo, 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 what did you do to me? Eliza wept bitterly as she defended against Enlin's attacks. Enlin glanced at the system, but there was still no response. Haha, why don't you guess? He laughed coldly. Enlin forcefully took a slash from Eliza's blade. The pitch-black sword gleam slashed down again, and a ghastly bloody gash appeared on Eliza's body. Just as Eliza was moaning to her heart's content, the make-you-poop technique was activated. Suddenly, an intense feeling of diarrhea engulfed Eliza's entire body. At her realm, although she had long since abstained from eating, she had still eaten and drunk quite a lot of alcohol during tonight's blood-tasting festival. There were still some things that had yet to be completely digested. Puff! Eliza's back door exploded. Bright red liquid gushed out along with some unknown substance. Ah! The woman finally screamed. She frantically retreated with one hand covering her lower body. Her crimson face was filled with humiliation and hatred. Seeing this, Enlin calmed down, since he couldn't make her hate him by abusing her. Then he would go and disgust her. He would disgust her until she hated him. Abusing someone and disgust someone were actually two different concepts. Abusing someone was domineering conquest and ravaging, while disgust someone was stimulating the other party to feel disgust and disgust. After seeing the hatred on Eliza's face, Enlin excitedly glanced at the system. He discovered that there was still no sign of hatred. This meant that the hatred was still insufficient, and he had to work harder. The make-you-poop technique could only be used once a day. Now that it couldn't be used anymore, what should he do? Eliza used a body cleansing technique. With a furious shout, she pounced toward Enlin again. Ha ha! You're actually doing such a thing in front of me. How disgusting! Enlin laughed heartily. The contempt and mockery on his face became even more pronounced. He didn't hit Alyssa anymore, lest Alyssa got the thrill of being abused. He also didn't want Eliza to hit him, lest she felt pleasure from abusing others. Eliza was a severe masochist, and, at the same time, she also had sadistic tendencies. The best method for Enlin wasn't to fight, but to make her unable to exert her strength. This way, she wouldn't feel pleasure, and she would become irritated and even hate him. Why are you hiding? Why aren't you attacking? Eliza's crimson saber was violent and bloodthirsty, while her ice saber was cold and merciless. Even a return to void intermediate stage mighty figure wouldn't be able to dodge the combined attacks of the two sabers. However, after activating the divine inspection technique and Kuin Peng travel, Enlin's movement techniques were as fast as a ghost's. He was so agile that it made one's hair stand on end. He was able to narrowly dodge Eliza's attacks many times. Eliza slashed so many times, but not a single one of her attacks landed on Enlin. This made her go crazy, and she almost broke down. At this moment, within the main hall, close to 1,000 Blood Tribe cultivators were lying on the ground. The newly advanced return to void stage mighty figure, Starbucks, was also lying on the ground, barely breathing. Su Xiaolan was dressed in a green dress, and her features were exquisite and otherworldly. She stood where she was, and the pool of blood on the ground made the red carpet appear even more vibrant. Her appearance and demeanor were clearly like that of a celestial maiden. However, to the dying Blood Tribe cultivators, she was as terrifying as a demoness who had walked out a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. This is too terrifying. She can actually absorb life. She never gets tired. The more she kills, the more powerful she becomes. She really is a demoness. Stop talking. Don't let her notice us, the injured blood clansmen whispered to each other. Even though Su Xiaolan was panting slightly from exhaustion, she was still extremely energetic. This was the core cultivation technique of Xing Tian's Tao of slaughter. The more she killed, the more terrifying her killing intent would be. She no longer looked at the wounded cultivators beneath her feet. Instead, she silently walked to the entrance of the main hall and looked into the distance. What is Enlin doing? Why is he taking so long to defeat a supreme being of the return to void intermediate stage? Then, Su Xiaolan saw the strange battle between Enlin and Eliza. Eliza attacked frantically, but Enlin kept dodging and refusing to attack. Su Xiaolan was a little puzzled. What is Enlin doing? Also, Eliza's clothes are too tattered after being injured by Enlin. Eliza's figure was voluptuous and sexy to begin with. At this moment, her clothes were like a few rags hanging on her body. It was too unsightly. On the battlefield, Eliza unleashed another powerful saber slash, and Enlin retreated explosively to dodge it. At this moment, a shrewd light flashed across Eliza's eyes, and she immediately fled into the distance. She actually chose to flee at the same time that she forced Enlin into retreat. Want to flee? Not so easy. Enlin sneered coldly. He used wings of wind, Kuan Peng travel, and wind sword at the same time, and he quickly caught up to Eliza. Then he started to harass her with guerrilla attacks, such as giant cloud hands or water-type binding snake whips. Su Xiaolan's mouth gaped open. Aren't Enlin's spell techniques a little strange? Why aren't you hitting me? Why aren't you letting me go? Eliza, who couldn't get any pleasure and was constantly being disgusted, finally roared in grief and indignation. However, Enlin gazed at Eliza affectionately. Because I like you. Eliza's pupils contracted, and her mouth gaped open. However, Enlin maintained a sincere smile on his face. He knew that since he couldn't torture Eliza, then he would harass her to his heart's content and not let her have her way. He would even use frivolous love to disgust her. Then, Eliza, who sensed that she was being humiliated and looked down upon, would definitely develop hatred toward Enlin. Enlin felt that this plan was perfect. However, he didn't know that there was a woman witnessing this process from a mountain peak not far away. Su Xiaolan. Chapter 1096. You have to restrain yourself. This isn't the best time for domestic violence. You have to restrain yourself. Su Xiaolan stood at the top of the mountain outside the door. Her dragon sparrow sword trembled incessantly in her hand. She was constantly reminding herself to look at the bigger picture and not be impulsive. Perhaps Enlin had his reasons for doing this? On the battlefield, like me, Eliza's pupils contracted upon hearing this. Then, a feeling of nausea welled up in her heart. You're so disgusting. It was clear that Enlin's frivolous and disdainful words made Eliza extremely unhappy. She swung her saber toward Enlin again. Enlin activated his divine inspection technique and used Kuan Peng travel to dodge the saber slashes. He didn't attack. Eliza took advantage of the gap between Enlin's retreat to turn tail and run. At this moment, the giant hand of clouds and mist began to slam toward her. Tens of thousands of water snakes coiled around her like tentacles. Eliza was on the verge of a mental breakdown. She swung her sabers toward Enlin in a frenzy. You're not hitting me, and you're not letting me go. What are you trying to do? There was a frivolous and disdainful smile on Enlin's face. I don't want to do anything. I just want to play with you. I want to see you struggle before you die. Boom! Eliza exploded. Disdain, frivolousness, and disgust were different from abuse. This kind of non-violent method completely enraged her. I'm going to kill you. Eliza's eyes glowed with a terrifying, ferocious light. Her aura soared explosively. Streaks of white lines appeared on her arms. She had clearly used some kind of mystic technique. Red snow, saber wheel. Boundless white light burst forth from her arms. She spun around and waved her sabers. A terrifying frost and snow sealed the space within a radius of 5 kilometers. 2 circular saber projections, one red and one white, whistled through the air with the power to destroy heaven and earth. One saber was violent and domineering, capable of annihilating all living beings. The other was merciless and cold, capable of freezing heaven and earth. Although the intent realms of the 2 sabers were different, they fused together in an extremely ingenious manner, making it impossible for Enlin to escape. However, Enlin didn't need to escape. He merely pulled out a chaotic alloy brick. This should be Eliza's strongest attack. And Lin sensed danger from this move. These two blades really had the power to injure him. Rumble. The saber light landed on the black brick, and the destructive power caused everything within a 10-kilometer radius to be reduced to dust. The aftermath of the saber radiance even flattened the surrounding mountains. Eliza panted heavily, her face filled with hatred as she looked in a certain direction. He took my red snow blade will head on. Even if he doesn't die, he should be heavily injured, right? Then, her eyes gradually widened as she looked forward in disbelief. How is this possible? A massive black brick appeared in the distance, silently floating in the air. And Lin calmly walked out from the black brick with a mysterious smile on his face. "Thank you," he said with a smile. "Thank me for what?" Eliza had a bad feeling about this. It really wasn't easy. "Thank you for helping me complete the mission." And Lin laughed heartily. God of War Heaven Blasting Cannon. No living being can stand on the God of War's head. If there is blasted down, the activation condition is that the other party has to look down on the host, and the host can burn vital energy to unleash this spell technique. However, it can only be used once a day. That's right, Eliza's hatred had already reached the required level. Right now, and Lin had already successfully learned the God of War Heaven Blasting Cannon. "Didn't you want me to attack you? I'll fulfill your wish now." And Lin slowly descended to the ground before looking up at Eliza, who was hovering in midair. This angle was just right, and he could see a pair of slender, snow-white legs under her tattered robe. Tui. No, he could activate the God of War Heaven Blasting Cannon. All of a sudden, Eliza's hair stood on end as the threat of death surged toward her like a tidal wave. And Lin curled his fingers together, and vital energy instantly surged for over 50 kilometers. At the same time, the sea of vital energy within his body began to churn as he frantically extracted vital energy from his body. The golden ball of light between his palms became brighter and brighter, and its might became more and more terrifying. Under the night sky, the light between Lin's palms lit up the entire night sky. A feeling of being locked on made Eliza's body tremble. She immediately constructed over a dozen different types of defensive spell techniques and used her strongest dual saber defensive immortal array. Right at this moment, and Lin's hands had already reached out toward Eliza. "No one can look down on me. Go, God of War Heaven Blasting Cannon." Boom! An earth-shattering explosion erupted. The ground under Lin's feet instantly caved in with a radius of over a kilometer. Golden light shot out from his palms and soared into the sky. Heaven and earth split apart wherever it passed. It was as if billions of living beings were roaring in indignation and wanted to shatter the heavens. This was a cannon that wanted to blast the heavens. The instant Eliza saw the heaven blasting cannon, she fell into despair. That energy cannon was really going to blast the heavens, and she was just cannon fodder who had accidentally blocked the cannon's path. Boom, boom, boom. The dozen or so defensive spell techniques that Eliza had cast were easily destroyed. Her strongest dual saber defensive immortal array was also destroyed after a short period of time. Eliza let out the most ecstatic scream she had ever let loose. The golden cannon engulfed the woman in ragged clothes. Finally, it pierced through the heavens and reached a place infinitely high and infinitely far. It was as if it was a golden pillar that connected heaven and earth. Starbucks, Burke, and Simpson, the three supreme beings of the Return to Void stage, were all stupefied when they saw the cannon blast that seemed like it was going to destroy the heavens. Was this a technique that a soul formation stage cultivator could use? Gasp! This cannon blast is so F***king powerful. And Lin, who had cast this spell technique, stared blankly at the scene before him. He was also extremely astonished. It was as if his body had been sucked dry, and his aura was extremely weak. He could only silently take out a few high-rank spirit pills and stuff them into his mouth like jelly beans to replenish his vitality. Then, he dashed over and took Eliza's storage ring. As for that masochist, she had already been blasted into smithereens by the God of War Heaven Blasting Cannon. The green-clothed woman smiled. It seems like the mission has been completed. It's about time for you to die. She turned around and looked emotionlessly at the sect leader of the Bone Demon Blood Sect, Starbucks. Her dragon sparrow sword whistled through the air once again. Don't think that I'm afraid of you. Starbucks roared in rage. He brandished his crimson sword and stabbed it toward the woman in front of him. His attack was extremely powerful. However, the despair and fear in his eyes betrayed his emotions. The soul formation stage male in the distance was extremely powerful. However, the woman before him was also an immeasurably powerful freak. The holy vermilion bird's cry was like the cry of the nine heavens. An extremely terrifying sword projection tore through Starbucks' sword stab and shattered his crimson sword. Finally, his body was engulfed by the sword projection. In the darkness of the night, a white flaming sword projection suddenly pierced through the sky, lighting up the entire world. The gigantic head atop the mountain peak was finally sliced in half by this sword projection, and it tumbled down from the top of the mountain. Xiaolan's final sword strike killed all the blood tribe cultivators in the hall, including Starbucks. The Bone Demon Blood Sect no longer existed in this world. Chapter 1097. Following the deaths of Eliza and Starbucks, Burke and Simpson, who were in the sky, started to panic. They used all sorts of methods to escape. Simpson, who was being held back by Yao Ji, found it extremely difficult to escape. Yao Ji was capable of spatial skipping, and her swordsmanship was also extremely powerful. He had only managed to put some distance between himself and Yao Ji, but Yao Ji was already right in front of him. It looked like Gundam 3 was actually easier to deal with since he didn't know how to use spatial skipping. Burke had already made up his mind to use his life-burning mystic technique, Thousand Blood Clone technique. A viscous black cloud expanded in all directions, enshrouding the entire sky. Thousands of Balks rushed out from the black cloud and fled in all directions. Not only did they all look the same, but their auras were also the same. Every single one of them is me. Let's see how you're going to chase after me. The thousands of Balks laughed in unison as they fled into the distance at an extremely fast speed. Countless photons flashed past Gundam 3's eyes at this moment, and an electromagnetic field instantly expanded for over 50 kilometers. Life source analysis, whoosh. The energy thrusters behind Gundam 3 exploded with a blinding light, and a sonic boom erupted. Its body transformed into a streak of white light as it pounced toward one of the Balks. As it closed in, the superparticle sword in its hand slashed toward the black-robed male with rage. Impossible! Burke's expression shifted drastically, and he immediately whipped out countless chains from his sleeves to bind the superparticle sword. His escape plan was foiled just like that. Don't underestimate the top-notch mechanical creations of the Purple Star. Robots are the best at finding differences. An ethereal voice traveled over from afar. At this moment, heaven and earth suddenly plunged into boundless darkness. His five senses were completely lost, and his divine sense was completely obscured. Burke suddenly felt an indescribable pain tearing through his body, from his head all the way to his thighs. Even his consciousness was being torn apart at the same time. When the stars and moon appeared in the sky again, the male was already howling in agony. Behind him, a male wielding a black sword stood silently. His body was slowly dislocated, and he was completely sliced in half. Blood splattered through the air. And Lin snapped his fingers, and the holy vermilion flame surged forth, incinerating Burke's body into nothingness. Gundam 3, hurry and help Yao Ji, and Lin said as he picked up the storage ring. On the other side of the battlefield, Simpson was also a spent force. He detected the deaths of the three return to void stage mighty figures through his divine sense, and a sense of sorrow welled up in his heart. At the same time, a hint of fear and insanity welled up in his heart. He had already given up on escaping, because he really couldn't escape, and he couldn't defeat the enchantress in front of him. Simpson was struggling. He was waiting for an opportunity. After a short while, Gundam 3 also arrived and joined in on the attack. The pressure on Simpson skyrocketed. His divine body, which he was most proud of, was already riddled with wounds. At this moment, the white figure finally appeared. "Fellow Taoist, listen to me," Simpson shouted. Unlin remained silent as he continued to approach Simpson. At the same time, he secretly commanded Gundam 3 and Yao Ji to attack the Blood Tribe mighty figure with all their might. Boom, boom, boom. Simpson was engulfed in a terrifying photovoltaic cannon. A rather charred man flew out from the center of the energy explosion and shouted, "Don't kill me. If you want to continue to obtain the blood of the sacred ancestor, I have a way and channel to do so." And Lin's mouth twitched. He gave this condition 0 marks. "My entire body is filled with the blood of the sacred ancestor. Why would I want that? UF Asterisk King say you have a way and channel to obtain it? You want to beat me until I bleed, then make me lick my own wounds?" A disdainful expression appeared on Simpson's face at the sight of Enlin still charging toward him. He was a little dumbstruck as a sense of absurdity welled up in his heart. Not only had his words failed to tempt Enlin, but he had instead been scorned. "You forced me to do this. If you don't accept this condition, then I'll take you down with me." Simpson's expression was ferocious as he abruptly stabbed his hand into his own heart. His muscular body quickly wilted, and the blood within his body also evaporated. His body shriveled up like a deflated balloon, and he soon became nothing more than a bag of bones. At the same time, his vitality was also extinguished in that instant. And Lin's expression faltered upon seeing this. Was he committing suicide? No. How could an opponent like him, who was still trying to find a way to beg for his life, commit suicide so easily? And Lin was still in a daze, but Yao Ji wasn't going to waste time on meaningless emotions. She immediately unleashed a burst of dark purple dragon flames at the emaciated corpse. The purple flames were imbued with extremely high temperatures and corrosive properties, and the corpse was instantly incinerated into a cloud of smoke. Yao Ji made a grabbing motion with one hand, and a powerful gravitational force sucked Simpson's storage ring into her hand. Her movements were extremely smooth and fluid, and the onlookers couldn't help but sigh in admiration. The purple flames hadn't even dissipated when a grayish-white projection suddenly extended a sharp claw and leaped out of the flames, charging toward Enlin at an extremely terrifying speed. Appraised consciousness form. Yao Ji's eyes flashed with a white light, and she extended her hands toward the grayish-white projection. Countless pink chains, which were also projections, shot forth as fast as lightning. "Ha! My consciousness form can unleash power for a short period of time, and it's far more powerful than my previous power." The consciousness form, Simpson chortled with glee as he evaded Yao Ji's chains with a ghostly movement technique. Gundam 3 positioned itself in front of Enlin. It slashed its sword towards Simpson. Simpson's grayish-white projection suddenly became even more illusory and insubstantial. Gundam 3's sword pierced through Simpson's body, but it was unable to inflict any damage. Not only that, but Simpson's sword pierced right through Gundam 3's body and pounced toward Enlin at an extremely fast speed. Soul ignition possession. Simpson's grayish-white projection instantly erupted with a dazzling light, and the powerful power of his consciousness surged forth like a massive wave, reaching its peak condition. His true objective wasn't to perish with Enlin. Instead, he was going to corrode Enlin's consciousness and take over his body. "Ha! Such a good body. I won't hold back then." A greedy expression appeared on Simpson's face, and he extended his crimson claws in an attempt to tear Enlin's consciousness apart. Enlin was momentarily dumbfounded at the sight of Simpson's fearsome power of his consciousness, but a smile appeared on his face instead. "Perfect. I'll use you to practice my saber skills." He had obtained the 2nd-grade immortal pill, the Dark Phoenix Dead Spirit pill, from killing the Black Fox Empress. This immortal pill was refined using the bone marrow of a mythological beast, the Dark Phoenix. Not only could consumption enhance one's divine sense and absorb the power of dark flames, but but there was also a certain chance that one could comprehend the Tao of the Dark Phoenix. And Lin had already consumed this immortal pill back in the West Sea. To be honest, I really do have a lot of fate with phoenixes. His eyes suddenly became pitch black, and everything around him became deathly silent. It was as if a black phoenix with an indistinct face had flown out from his body and was circling around him. The power of the divine Tao, comparable to that of a pinnacle stage of the return to void stage, erupted forth. Come out. Divine Soul Technique, Dark Phoenix Saber. Chapter 1098. The indistinct black phoenix beside him suddenly hovered in front of him before materializing into a black saber with a chilling sharpness. The dark phoenix existed in dreams, and its dance brought all living beings to paradise. This was the Dark Phoenix Tao that Lin had attained after ingesting the Dark Phoenix Undead Spirit Pill. It was an offensive spell technique belonging to the Divine Spirit lineage, the Dark Phoenix Blade, an extremely powerful divine spirit that was comparable to that of a cultivator at the Return to Void pinnacle stage, coupled with a divine spirit spell technique from the Phoenix lineage. How terrifying would it be? Simpson, who had been laughing heartily a moment ago, now looked as if he had seen a ghost. How is this possible? How can your divine spirit be so powerful as well? He roared in shock and horror, and Lin chuckled. Because I'm omnipotent. Simpson, he knew that there was no way out, and his crimson claw slashed toward the black blade. Extreme demonic blood blade. The crimson blade slashed down with a power that was enough to tear apart the divine spirit of a return to void stage mighty figure. The demonic sound of tens of thousands of wailing ghosts also appeared at this moment. The Dark Phoenix blade seemed to sense something and slashed down as well. This slash seemed to have drawn the entire world into a deep slumber. Everything fell into eternal darkness. The wailing ghosts disappeared, and Simpson's crimson claw was also devoured. No, there was a look of horror on his face. In the end, his divine spirit was also devoured by this slash. After the darkness, everything became quiet again. Only specks of starlight shone under the moonlight. There was no trace of Simpson in this world anymore. And Lin looked at the empty void and shook his head slightly. He sighed with emotion. There really isn't a single one who can fight. All right, there's no one else here. They're all dead. Who's going to watch you flex now? A crisp and pleasant voice sounded from behind him. And Lin turned around and saw Su Xiaolan flying toward him on her sword. She glared at him. Not only that, but she was also gripping the dragon sparrow sword tightly. There seemed to be a killing intent. Let's go. Why are you still in a daze? Are you waiting for the other ancestors to come and take revenge? Su Xiaolan couldn't help but remind Lin again when she saw that he had no intention of running away. And Lin returned to his senses and looked at the ruins of the Bone Demon Blood sect in the distance. He said with some reluctance, "Have you finished looting all the treasures?" "You're done looting? If you're done fighting, then you're going to take the treasure. Otherwise, I'm just going to watch you show off. We've also killed all of the enemies, but there seems to be a Blood Tribe member who used voice transmission talismans to leak the news," Su Xiaolan replied with a hint of disappointment in her voice. "There's one more thing I have to do." And Lin suddenly flew towards the Bone Demon Blood sect. "Hey, what else do you want to do?" Su Xiaolan shouted and followed him. And Lin looked at the ruins of the Bone Demon Blood sect and quickly found a relatively independent space. Su Xiaolan came to her senses and recalled that this was where the auction items of the blood-tasting festival were stored. She couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, "I really didn't expect you to be so kind." And Lin slashed open the space with his sword, revealing all kinds of powerful living beings that were on the verge of death. "I'm not going to save them. I'm going to stab a living being to death." "Su Xiaolan, how much hatred do you have? I also want to know. Little Xie keeps urging me to do this." And Lin laughed bitterly. He also had a confused expression on his face. He released a dozen or so intelligent living beings from different races. They bowed to Lin and Su Xiaolan in gratitude and thanked them profusely. And Lin finally arrived in front of the powerful being from the Darkwing tribe. He waved the evil-slaying sword in his hand and asked curiously, "Hey, brother, do you recognize this sword?" The dark-winged tri-being was tied to a cross and looked hopefully at Lin. However, his expression changed drastically when he saw the evil-slaying sword. This is splat. The evil-slaying sword suddenly pierced into the dark-winged tribe being's heart. The dark-winged tribe being was dumbfounded. Su Xiaolan was given a fright, and Lin was also dumbfounded. He scolded, "Holy F***CK. Little Xia, why did you move yourself? You should at least let him finish speaking first." "I'm not interested." The evil-slaying sword's cold voice traveled over, and Lin's lips twitched. "I'm interested." The evil-slaying sword ignored him, and Lin turned his gaze toward the astonished dark-winged tribe cultivator and explained, "Brother, you might not believe me when I tell you this, but I didn't want to stab you." The sword moved on its own. The dark-winged tribe being's lips twitched. "I believe you, and Lin." The dark-winged tribe being was dead. The evil-slaying sword buzzed as if it had completed a mission and fell into a deep slumber again. And Lin was dazed for a moment before using his divine flame to cremate the dark-winged tribe being. However, his mind was filled with questions. Why did little Xie want to kill the dark-winged tribe being so badly? Also, why did the dark-winged tribe being seem to know that the evil-slaying sword wanted to kill them? And Lin asked the evil-slaying sword a few questions with his consciousness. However, the replies he received were guess, not telling, humph, and a cold and aloof silence. "We're done here. Let's go." And Lin asked the evil-slaying sword many times to no avail. He decided to get down to business first. The two of them flew toward Lincoln City, leaving behind a pile of rubble. High up in the sky, a black brick flew toward the east at an extremely fast speed. And Lin and Su Xiaolan sat on the black brick and eagerly counted their spoils of war. My luck is pretty good. I've obtained 3 return to void stage mighty figures spoils of war." And Lin looked at Su Xiaolan sheepishly as he said this. The treasures of the 3 most powerful mighty figures had all been plundered by him. He was worried that Su Xiaolan would be disappointed. However, Su Xiaolan's eyes were curved into crescents. "My luck is also pretty good. I've obtained many blood, tribe, mighty figures spoils of war." And Lin saw that Su Xiaolan seemed to be in a good mood, so he continued to count his spoils of war. He refined the 3 storage rings and counted the spirit stones first. Soon, an expression of ecstasy appeared on his face. "This is great. There are actually 8,200,000 spirit stones in here. On average, each person has over 2 million spirit stones. These mighty figures have all prepared a lot of spirit stones for this blood-tasting festival." An elated expression also appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. "My gains are also quite good. I did a rough calculation and found that I obtained 14 million spirit stones." And Lin's hand trembled, and the storage rings fell onto the brick in fright. "You? How many spirit stones did you say you had?" And Lin's eyes widened. 14 million spirit stones." Su Xiaolan smiled with faint dimples. She was clearly in a good mood. And Lin, what the F***CK? Was there something wrong with the way he opened it? He had worked himself to the bone and killed the 3 big bosses with all his might. Yet, the money he had obtained was actually so much less than Su Xiaolan, who had dealt with the small monsters. As if she had seen in Lin's astonishment and confusion, Su Xiaolan explained in a very considerate manner. "Actually, for this blood-tasting festival, even the mighty figures of medium-sized sects will gather resources to participate in the competition. Moreover, there are also some representatives. It's very likely that they have a top-notch sect behind them." "That's right, that makes sense," and Lin came to a sudden realization. Some mighty figures didn't come, but their money did. In this way, wouldn't they have formed enmity with many awesome sects? However, this method of earning money seemed to be a bit fast. "Xiaolan, I have a bold idea, and Lin, you'd better obediently stay here for now. If you lack money, I'll give it to you." Chapter 1099. And Lin was slightly moved as he looked at the solemn expression on Su Xiaolan's face. The 2 blood tribe versions of Lin and Su Xiaolan had finally tasted the taste of sudden riches after experiencing an earth-shattering battle. And Lin was itching to make a move. Su Xiaolan put a stop to Lin's bold idea with a serious expression. At such a sensitive time, it was enough to provoke a wave of blood tribe cultivators. If they continued and alerted a Dao integration stage super mighty figure, their lives would be in danger. Lin thought about it for a moment and felt like this made sense. They had offended not just one or two powers this time. Instead, they had offended a large group of blood tribe cultivators. A Dao integration stage, super mighty figure might really come. It was better for them to return to Lincoln City. The two of them continued to sort through their spoils of war. Su Xiaolan didn't have many high-rank spoils of war. The most she had were high-rank spirit tools and high-rank spirit pills. Although they were low-rank, there was a lot of them who didn't have one or two life-saving spirit pills in their storage rings. With so many blood tribe cultivator spoils of war, it was a massive amount of wealth. Although Lin didn't have many spoils of war, all of them were of the highest quality. There were 16 spirit tools, 46 spirit pills for immortal pills, and one immortal tool. All of these were truly top-notch items. The immortal tool was obtained from Simpson's storage ring. It was called the Blood Soul Cross. It could use one's own blood and consciousness to suppress the opponent's life. It was an intermediate rank immortal tool. This was a very practical immortal tool. Unfortunately, Simpson encountered a non-living Yao Ji, and then he encountered Lin with an extremely terrifying consciousness. He didn't even get a chance to show off his immortal tool before he died. As for the 4 immortal pills, they were all 7th grade immortal pills. They were called blood replenishing immortal pills, and they were blood replenishing immortal pills. They could quickly replenish one's blood and heal one's injuries, so they were very popular among blood tribe cultivators. The blood tribe had a very deep understanding of this type of blood immortal pills, so they were of extremely high quality. And Lin happily put these things away, feeling carefree in his heart. Sure enough, killing and robbing is the fastest way to earn money. He couldn't help but sigh. Su Xiaolan rolled her eyes. If you always stand by the river, your shoes will get wet. I'm warning you again. Please put away your bold idea. And Lin really couldn't hold back his Qilin arm. His total assets were now more than 94 million spirit stones, and he was very close to his goal of 100 million spirit stones. So be it. Let's go back to the Kingdom of the 9 States and find another opportunity to enforce justice on behalf of the heavens and wipe out a few demonic sections. And Lin repressed his impulsiveness and compromised. Su Xiaolan heaved a forlorn sigh. The Kingdom of the 9 States has the Celestial Court, the 4 great immortal sects, and the 9 Imperials. So there's no room for powerful demonic sections. All that's left are some small fries. Even if there's a demonic sect with a void return expert, they'll still have to tuck their tails between their legs. And Lin nodded in agreement. At least within the Kingdom of the 9 States, there were no truly lawless villains left. Even if they wanted to do something bad, they would do in secret and still have to flaunt that they were a righteous sect. Only those who had a screw loose and didn't want to live would openly antagonize the public, proclaiming that they were from a certain demonic sect or publicizing the evil cultivation techniques that their sect cultivated. It was precisely because of this imbalance in power between the righteous and the villains that it was extremely difficult for Lin to get rich by eliminating the demonic sects in the Kingdom of the 9 States. Just as Lin was itching to earn his last bucket of gold, in the core region of the dark marshlands, inside the Ling Shui sect, a cold and elegant woman with golden hair, crimson eyes, and blood-red hair was looking at a piece of information with a dark expression. She was dressed in a white robe with a tight waist. Humph! Someone actually dares to disrupt the blood-tasting festival and ruin my holy leader's grand plan. They're looking down on me, holy disciple Cassidy, since they're so eager to die. Don't blame me for being ruthless. Cassidy crossed her fingers, and there was a fierce glint in her eyes. Men, have the Ling Shui godly battle team investigate this matter with all their might. Ask our tribe's great divination master, Feng Wuyin, to assist in the investigation. At the same time, report this matter to Emperor Yi Deng. After issuing a series of instructions, she dialed a voice transmission talisman to a certain man. Hey, Tobias, our holy leader's plan to develop underground forces has been foiled by a certain arrogant guy. Huh? You want to go personally? You've only just broken through to the Return to Void final stage, and your cultivation base hasn't stabilized yet, right? The other party might be a bit strong, but even 4 Return to Void stage cultivators were killed. What? You want to bring that thing over? All right, I understand. The holy leader's dignity cannot be violated. After ending the voice transmission talisman, a cold smile suddenly appeared on Cassidy's cold and elegant face. No matter who you are, you're going to die for sure. Cassidy was extremely confident. This time, she had already set up a trap. Even if the other party was a mighty figure at the Return to Void pinnacle stage, they wouldn't be able to escape from her grasp. She had initially planned to give Lynn a present, but who would have thought that something like this would happen? Cassidy was extremely displeased. She pondered for a moment before transforming into a streak of crimson light that soared into the sky. Achoo! And Lynn couldn't help but sneeze. You're already at the soul formation stage, but you can still sneeze? Su Xiaolan was a little surprised, and Lin rubbed his nose with a smile. Perhaps someone is thinking of me. Su Xiaolan dragged out her voice as she stared intently at Lin. And Lin hurriedly explained, I'm talking about my dog. Dabai is thinking of me. Su Xiaolan, oh. The two of them flew toward Lincoln City atop their brick. Although it was only tens of thousands of kilometers away, it would still take some time to get there. However, it didn't matter. The two of them were extremely secretive, so the chances of them being caught were almost zero. In the central region of the Dark Marshlands, within the Divine Palace of Life, Emperor Yi Deng fell silent upon hearing a piece of news. A suspected Blood Tribe mighty figure slaughtered over 1,000 Blood Tribe cultivators during the blood-tasting festival of the Bone Demon Blood Sect for a precious treasure. In order to do this, it would require at least several Return to Void intermediate stage mighty figures, or at least one supreme mighty figure at the Return of Void pinnacle stage, right? As for Dao integration stage mighty figures, if they had attacked in the Dark Marshlands, there was no way he wouldn't have sensed them. In reality, it was not uncommon for sects to be annihilated for a certain treasure in the Dark Marshlands. However, it was extremely rare for 4 Return to Void stage mighty figures to perish at the same time. The last time something like this had happened was last year. That was an extremely painful memory. Furthermore, all of the Return to Void stage mighty figures under his command had perished. Wait, last year, Emperor Yi Deng's expression suddenly darkened. Wasn't the end-of-term examination for the students of the Celestial Court? Was this a coincidence, or all kinds of information began to connect, and a certain speculation flashed through Emperor Yi Deng's mind? Boom! A streak of crimson light soared into the sky from the Divine Palace of Life. It tore through space and hurtled toward a certain location. Chapter 1100. Within the ruins of the Bone Demon Blood Sect, great divination master Feng Wuyin unleashed a golden domain that encompassed a radius of close to 10 kilometers. 2 Blood Tribe mighty figures in blood-colored robes stood in the same spot, and an extremely vast and terrifying aura radiated from their bodies. They were 2 of the 3 holy disciples of the Blood Tribe, Cassidy and Tobias. As for Merlin, he was coordinating all the resources available to the Blood Tribe to search for the escapees. There aren't many of them, only 3 to 4 people. Furthermore, they have lightning, fire, and sword techniques. They even have some high-level weapons that are a combination of technology and cultivation. Feng Wuyin pointed toward a certain direction in the east. According to the marks on the ground, the direction of the wind, and the direction of the vital energy surge, they've most likely headed in that direction. The east? There don't seem to be any strongholds of large forces in that direction. Cassidy's brows furrowed slightly. Another rumble erupted from the sky. A crimson light filled the entire sky. A man in a blood-colored imperial robe appeared from the clouds. He looked down at the marks on the ground with an indifferent expression, and his power of the divine Tao erupted forth without reservation. Emperor Yi Deng. Tobias bowed slightly. Cassidy, Holy Disciple Tobias. Emperor Yi Ding also nodded in greeting. The status of the Holy Disciples was extremely high, and they were almost comparable to Dao integration stage blood tribe emperors. Thus, they treated each other as equals, and there was no difference in status. Feng Wuyan, who was only at the return to void final stage, bowed respectfully toward the emperor in the sky. After combining the information they had received, they flew toward a certain direction at the same time. Cassidy transmitted her voice to Tobias. Tobias, why is Emperor Yi Ding so enthusiastic about this matter? He rushed here without any hesitation, as if he's afraid that the culprit will escape. Is he hiding something from us? Tobias nodded. Could it be someone that Emperor Yi Ding knows? Or is an enemy of his? However, what is the basis of his deduction? He didn't seem to have received much information at the time. It is indeed rare for him to rush here so quickly. However, it doesn't matter as long as the result is the same. Anyone who obstructs the holy leader's plan must die. At this moment, in the western region of the dark marshlands, Lin was flying on his brick at an extremely fast speed. I have a bad feeling about this, Su Xiaolan suddenly said. It's as if there are enemies approaching us. Don't worry, it's just destroying a layer of the Bone Devil Blood sect. Setting aside whether or not they'll be able to detect us. Even if they do, we'll still be able to hold our own against mighty figures at the return to Void Pinnacle stage. And Lin offered words of consolation. What if it's a Dao integration stage super mighty figure? Su Xiaolan asked. Hee, Dao integration stage super mighty figures aren't that easy to mobilize. Big shots like them would definitely plan carefully and think about it before deciding whether to make a move or not. When that time comes, we'll have already escaped back to the Kingdom of the Nine States. Who will be able to track us down? And Lin was confident in his victory. Then, in the distant horizon, boundless red clouds suddenly appeared. And Lin, look behind us, Su Xiaolan exclaimed. And Lin had already sensed it with his powerful divine sense. He couldn't help but gasp. There's no need to look anymore. Hurry, crush the jade talisman of the celestial court and ask for reinforcements. Use the highest grade jade talisman. Su Xiaolan immediately crushed the jade talisman and unleashed her aura to lock onto the enemy's location. What rank is the enemy? She asked urgently. And Lin spoke with difficulty. Doubt integration stage. Do I have the mouth of a crow? Su Xiaolan was on the verge of tears. Don't say that. My mouth is poisonous. And Lin was also on the verge of a mental breakdown. F*CK. He had just said that a Dao integration stage super mighty figure wouldn't be able to attack so decisively, and the enemy immediately pounced toward them. Furthermore, they had easily locked onto their location. It felt like they knew that they would run toward them. Could it be that the Dao integration stage super mighty figure had guessed something? And Lin unleashed his divine sense to the fullest, and he could sense the immense pressure emanating from the red clouds in the distance. That power was extremely vast, and it was imbued with an unstoppable might and hostility. It was getting closer and closer. A majestic voice traveled over from the distance. I'll give you 10 seconds to surrender, and I'll grant you a more comfortable death. Rumble. Red clouds began to spread over the entire sky, and a rich stench of blood permeated the entire space. A man in an imperial robe with blood dragons leaped toward them at an extremely fast speed. As expected, he was a Dao integration stage super mighty figure. Su Xiaolan's features paled slightly, and her heart rate also began to accelerate. You want to leave after killing several return to void stage super mighty figures of our blood tribe? Do you really think that you can come and go as you please in the dark marshlands? Another pleasant voice traveled over. 3 blood tribe super mighty figures began to appear behind Emperor Yi Ding. 2 of them wore white holy disciple robes, while 1 wore a crimson golden robe. They were none other than the blood tribe holy disciples, Cassidy and Tobias, as well as the great divination master, Feng Wuyan. And Lin and Su Xiaolan turned to look at the majestic Cassidy and Tobias who had suddenly appeared behind them. Cassidy and Tobias also saw the frantically fleeing Enlin and Su Xiaolan. The ferocious Cassidy and Tobias were dumbstruck. Enlin and Su Xiaolan, who wore grave and panicked expressions, were also dumbstruck. This scene in their eyes was so absurd. Was there something wrong with this? Cassidy's eyes widened. The enemy that she was desperately pursuing to obstruct the Holy Leader's plan was actually the Holy Leader herself? Enlin was also momentarily dazed by the scenes unfolding before him. The enemy that was desperately pursuing me was actually my servant? What a joke. So you're the ones who killed Buck and Starbucks of the Bone Demon Blood Sect, Simpson of the Heavenly Scorpion Sect, and Eliza of the Red Snow Sect? Emperor Yi Deng's eyes glowed with a divine light as he spoke in a thunderous voice. He made a grabbing motion with one hand, and the space within a radius of 50 kilometers was sealed by an extremely terrifying spatial power. This was a cage created by a Dao integration stage super mighty figure. Enlin and Su Xiaolan had nowhere to run. Huh? What Buck? What are you talking about, senior? I'm just an ordinary soul formation stage cultivator. Enlin came to his senses and spoke with a panicked expression. That's right. We're just cultivators sent here by the humans to survey the terrain. Su Xiaolan immediately understood what Enlin was implying, and she began to spout nonsense to stall for time. Right now, their only hope of survival was to stall for time and wait for reinforcements from the Celestial Court. Emperor Yi Deng's brows furrowed. Judging from the cultivation bases of the two cultivators before him, they were indeed at the soul formation stage. This couldn't be faked. Two soul formation stage cultivators were able to kill 4 return to void stage cultivators and annihilate over 1,000 blood tribe cultivators. This was a bit absurd. There was practically no possibility of this happening. Could it be that he had found the wrong people? No. Last year, it was said that his son also suffered a loss at the hands of a strangely strong cultivator in the deity transformation realm. Furthermore, the identity of that soul formation stage cultivator had already been verified. That cultivator was most likely also the murderer of his son. It's all connected. All of the clues have been connected. No wonder this man looked so familiar. Emperor Yi Deng roared in rage. So it's you, Enlin. Enlin. Chapter 1101. Emperor Yi Deng had finally seen through Enlin's disguise. Everything pointed toward Enlin. He was the sect leader of the 4-9 Immortal Sect. He was only at the soul formation stage, but he was able to fight against return to void final stage mighty figures. That's right. If it was him, then everything made sense. A terrifying crimson aura swept forth again, causing the space around them to twist and crack. Enlin and Su Xiaolan's breathing faltered at the same time, and their bodies instantly tensed up as they stared intently at Emperor Yi Deng. Although Emperor Yi Deng didn't have any evidence to prove his suspicions, he would rather kill the wrong person than let the wrong person escape. Enlin and Su Xiaolan had to die here. Right at this moment, an enraged roar suddenly sounded. So you're Enlin. You dare to kill my brother Simpson. Today, I'm going to avenge my fallen brother. Tobias roared. He raised his hand and summoned a crimson jade seal with a divine seal on it. This was a relic of the Blood Patriarch that he had obtained after progressing to the return to void final stage in the Holy Land of the Blood Patriarch, the divine heaven-sealing seal. It was also a mystic treasure that he had planned to use to kill mighty figures. Demonic slaughter space. Tobias roared as he attacked first. The crimson jade seal suddenly expanded, and the aura of the Blood Patriarch erupted forth. Tobias charged toward Enlin atop the divine heaven-sealing seal. Cassidy also let loose an enraged roar as she stabbed her sword toward Enlin. Be *starred. Give me back my bestie Eliza's life. Boom. A crimson halo imbued with extremely terrifying spatial power burst forth from the divine heaven-sealing seal before enshrouding Tobias, Cassidy, Enlin, and Su Xiaolan. I'm invincible in my demonic slaughter space. Tobias chortled with glee. In the blink of an eye, the spatial power of the mystic treasure erupted, and all 4 of them were sucked into the divine heaven-sealing seal at the same time. Emperor Yi Dang stared at the empty space in front of him and the divine heaven-sealing seal, and he faltered momentarily before flying into a rage. Have those two gone insane? I can kill them with a single slap if I leave them outside. However, he could understand the actions of the two chosen. After all, the deceased Alyssa and Simpson did indeed have some ties with Cassidy and Tobias. As for whether they were brothers or best friends, he didn't know. However, it was understandable that he was eager to take revenge with his own hands. Idiot! Without Tobias activating the divine heaven-sealing seal, even Emperor Yi Dang wouldn't be able to enter the demonic slaughter space. He could only let loose a string of curses before continuing to idle around. That's right, Emperor Yi Dang could only wait outside like an idiot for the outcome of the battle inside. Beside the great emperor was the great divination master, Feng Wuyan. He was also at a loss throughout the entire process. The development of the situation was a little out of his expectations. Meanwhile, within the demonic slaughter space, this was a space of death where the sky was dark and the ground had turned into a sea of blood. Dense blood chi and demonic chi filled the space. The owner of this space could borrow the power of the demonic slaughter space to continuously suppress and kill the living beings that were sucked into this space. However, at this moment, the creature that was sucked into this space was sitting on a chair, enjoying the leg massage from the owner of this space. Tobias, your forceful intervention was very clever and allowed you to temporarily evade Emperor Yi Dang's attack. However, don't think that just because you're giving me a massage now, it's time for you to explain to me what's going on, right? Lin harumphed coldly. Tobias silently turned toward Cassidy. A faint blush appeared on Cassidy's beautiful face, and a rare expression of embarrassment appeared on her face as she explained, "That's the person that I prepared for you was suddenly killed. So I'm very angry," Tobias admitted. "I was the one who wanted to avenge you at all costs." Cassidy pursed her lips with an aggrieved and self-reproachful expression. "I was the one who found great divination in Master Feng Wuyan and Emperor Yi Dang." Lin, he was very touched by the loyalty of these two people. "So in order to avenge Lin, you tried your best to hunt down Lin?" Su Xiaolan was astonished. Cassidy and Tobias nodded awkwardly, but politely. Lin covered his face with his hands. What the F***CK is going on? Not only was he being screwed over by his beast pets and disciple, but now even his servant was screwed over. They were pushing him directly into the ranks of Dao integration stage super mighty figures. What the F***CK was he supposed to do now? Cassidy's eyes glistened with a bright blush. "But, holy leader, isn't this a type of fate? To think that we would be able to meet under such circumstances. This is simply too miraculous." Lin's lips twitched. "Do you have some kind of misunderstanding about the word miraculous? This is an ill-fated fate. Do you understand what ill-fated fate is? We're going to die here. That won't happen, holy leader. I won't let you die here, even if I have to give up my life." Cassidy patted her massive chest with a solemn expression. "Holy leader, my divine heaven-sealing seal is an artifact left behind by the Blood Patriarch. Without my permission, even Emperor Yi Dang won't be able to force his way into its demonic slaughter space. We can stall for time here." Tobias also offered words of consolation. "How long can we stall for?" 20 minutes. Lin heaved a sigh of relief. 20 minutes should be enough. The powerful beings of the Celestial Court should be able to get here during this time. This mystic treasure of mine is very special. It can isolate all auras. Even the emperors of the Celestial Court might not be able to detect the location of the aura released by you after you crush the distress talisman," Tobias suddenly said. Lin felt like he had been scammed again. "But don't worry, the emperors of the Celestial Court should be able to detect the location of your aura at the very last moment, so they should be able to track you here." Tobias hurriedly tried to salvage the situation. Su Xiaolan couldn't help but ask, "I have a question. Can the divine heaven-sealing seal be taken away?" This was a very important question. Tobias, normal people can't. However, mighty figures who have attained the power of the divine Tao can forcibly take it away, but they won't be able to store it in their storage ring. Su Xiaolan and Lin, so you're saying that we can only wait and see if Emperor Yi Deng is retarded? What if he has some intelligence and moves the divine heaven-sealing seal somewhere else? Then the emperors of the celestial court won't be able to locate us? And Lin's expression darkened. Tobias nodded. You could say that. Everyone fell silent again, gambling on the intelligence of a Dao integration stage super mighty figure. Was there any hope? Xiaolan, I love you. And Lin, I love you too. And Lin and Xiaolan embraced each other tightly, enjoying the final moments of their lives. Cassidy and Tobias were also extremely moved by this scene. It was as if they were going to part forever. Holy Leader, I love you too. Cassidy was extremely emotional. Holy Leader, I love you too. Tears welled up in Tobias' eyes. Piss off. And Lin didn't want to speak to them anymore, and he glowered at them. Chapter 11:02. Outside the demonic slaughter space. The divine heaven-sealing seal revolved in the air, emanating a faint red glow. 10 minutes had passed since Tobias and Lin and the others had entered the demonic slaughter space. Great divination master Feng Wuyin couldn't help but interject. Emperor Yi Deng, should we move the divine heaven-sealing seal to another location? What if those two humans sent a signal earlier? Emperor Yi Deng harumphed coldly. Do you think I haven't thought of this possibility? Those two humans have fallen into the demonic slaughter space, and with the powers of holy disciples Tobias and Cassidy, they're dead for sure. He slowly pulled out a pitch-black spike, and a mysterious smile appeared on his face. As for why I'm still here, it's because I'm waiting for that emperor to come. Ever since I speculated that this matter has something to do with my son, Layden, I've prepared something good for them. It's time to settle the score from last time. Emperor Yi Deng's eyes were as cold as glaciers that would never melt. Emperor Tian Huang, if you come today, even if I don't kill you, I'll make sure you lose a piece of flesh. Layden's death might have something to do with Lin and the others. However, it was definitely related to Emperor Tian Huang. He was the one who had severely wounded Layden, and he was the one who had interfered when Emperor Yi Deng was avenging his son. As a result, Emperor Yi Deng didn't even have a chance to confirm the identity of the person who had killed his son. He had already made a mental note of this. Now was the time for him to exact his revenge. He's here. Emperor Yi Deng seemed to have sensed something, and he looked toward the horizon. Heaven and earth rumbled incessantly. A huge rift was suddenly torn open in the sky that was filled with red clouds. A figure stepped through the air, and the red clouds scattered in his wake. No, it's not Emperor Tian Huang. Emperor Yi Deng's expression shifted slightly. This aura is even more terrifying than Emperor Tian Huang's. It's as if it represents the will of the heavens. Dong! The sound of a large bell reverberated throughout heaven and earth. The red clouds were completely scattered by a mighty sound wave. The return of Void Final Stage Feng Wuyin trembled in fear. He stared blankly at the white figure in the sky, and he didn't even dare to breathe loudly. It's you, Celestial Arch. Emperor Yi Deng's eyes widened. Hee, long time no see, Emperor Yi Deng. I'm very touched that you intentionally stayed here to wait for me. The Celestial Arch strode over with a warm smile on his face, traversing dozens of kilometers with each step. Emperor Yi Deng roared with rage in his heart. Who the F***CK is waiting for you? I'm waiting for Emperor Tian Huang. Speaking of which, wasn't Emperor Tian Huang in charge of the Dark Marshlands? Why wasn't he the one who came? Emperor Yi Deng repressed the frustration in his heart and forced a smile onto his face. Are you that free, Celestial Arch? Such a small matter actually alarmed you to come personally? He was the boss of the Celestial Court. I ambushed a lowly general, but your general didn't come. Instead, an emperor came to confront me. What the hell is this? Am I that unlucky? I've been cooped up in the Celestial Court for far too long, so I came out for some fresh air, the Celestial Arch replied with a smile. There was no way he was going to tell Emperor Tian Huang that he was the one who had come to stop Emperor Tian Huang. This was the end of semester examination, after all. It went without saying that this enemy had to have been summoned by Enlin. With Enlin's penchant for attracting hatred, his opponents were definitely going to become more and more fearsome. For safety's sake, the Celestial Arch decided to come in person to eliminate all obstacles. Thus, Emperor Yi Deng's long-awaited plan was foiled. Emperor Yi Deng had used a secret weapon against the Celestial Arch. Only an idiot would do something like that. Whether or not he could defeat the Celestial Arch was one thing, but his enemy wasn't him, so there was no need to offend such a terrifying, mighty figure. Are you a little disappointed? It's all right. If you want to fight, I can spar with you. The Celestial Arch clasped one hand behind his back and splayed the other in front of him with a calm expression. Emperor Yi Deng's face convulsed slightly. No, I'm waiting for someone. The Celestial Arch turned toward the divine heaven-sealing seal with a smile. Are they in there? Emperor Yi Deng's mood was finally lifted upon hearing this. That's right. 2 of our holy disciples are currently sparring with the prodigies of your celestial court. I'm really looking forward to the outcome. One of them was at the pinnacle of the Return to Void intermediate stage, while the other was at the Return to Void final stage. Furthermore, they had the power boost from the demonic slaughter space. How could they lose against 2 soul formation stage cultivators? Even a top-rate mighty figure at the Return to Void pinnacle stage would die here. So what if you, the Sky Emperor, are here? If you can't enter the demonic slaughter space, it's a wasted trip. At most, I'll let you bring back 2 corpses. The Celestial Arch ignored Emperor Yi Deng's smug expression. In any case, he was confident that Enlin would be able to secure victory as long as his opponent wasn't a Dao integration stage super mighty figure. A few minutes later, the divine heaven ascension seal began to tremble. Rumble. A red circle of light appeared and expanded. Powerful spatial energy began to appear. The 2 emperors stared at the divine heaven-sealing seal. A smile appeared on Emperor Yi Deng's face, while the Celestial Arch wore an expectant expression. One figure after another appeared from the red halo. Emperor Yi Deng's smile gradually congealed on his face, and the Celestial Thearch's mouth also gaped open in shock. 4 figures appeared in their field of vision, but 2 of them were in extremely dire straits. They were the 2 Blood Tribe holy disciples that Emperor Yi Deng was extremely optimistic about. Cassidy and Tobias were both riddled with wounds, and their bodies were bound by countless silver chains. There was a dark red cross behind them, which was exuding an extremely terrifying restrictive power. This was the intermediate rank immortal tool that Enlin had just obtained, the Blood Soul Cross. This immortal tool could use its user's blood and the power of their consciousness to suppress their enemies. Even though Cassidy and Tobias had licked up all of their blood, the Blood Soul Cross was still able to unleash an extremely powerful restrictive power. How did you lose? Emperor Yi Deng was in complete disbelief. He was waiting for the 2 holy disciples to slay the 2 enemies before swaggering off into the distance. What was going on now? The 2 holy disciples have been captured, and Lin is simply too powerful. He has a mystic technique that can instantly erase a person's power. We were defeated by this power, Tobias explained with an indignant expression. Emperor Yi Deng fell silent, but his mind was racing. Was this an extremely powerful omnidirectional silence spell technique? It looked like he would have to prepare some high-rank spatial isolation spell techniques in order to nullify Lin's uncanny spell technique. It was better to be safe than sorry. He would remember this message. Haha, as expected of the elites of our celestial court. Well done. The Celestial Arch couldn't help but praise with a relaxed smile on his face. Everyone heaved a light sigh of relief upon seeing the Celestial Arch. They had found a backer. Taking Cassidy and Tobias as hostages was the worst possible outcome. Their enemies were simply too powerful, and they could easily capsize their boat. Getting Papa of the Celestial Court to save them was the best course of action. And Lin, Su Xiaolan, Cassidy, and Tobias all turned toward Emperor Yi Deng with peculiar expressions. How could there be such an idiot in this world? Chapter 11:03. Back in the demonic slaughter space, and Lin, Su Xiaolan, Cassidy, and Tobias all thought that Emperor Deng wouldn't be stupid enough to stay put. However, reality gave them a cruel slap to the face. Emperor Deng really did stay put and wait obediently. He didn't forcibly move the divine heaven-sealing seal. Thus, the mighty figures of the celestial court came to their rescue, and Lin and the others were all touched by Emperor Deng's benevolent and considered actions. Emperor Deng discovered that everyone was looking at him with a peculiar expression, and he immediately flared up with rage. "What are you looking at? You think you can read my mind? Release the holy disciples at once." Only then did Lin realize that he was still holding Cassidy and Tobias hostage. Now that the Celestial Arch was here, there wasn't much point in holding them hostage. The Celestial Thearch's eyes lit up at the sight of Cassidy and Tobias. These two were in Lin's servants. So that's how it is. What a coincidence. The Celestial Arch felt like he had to play along with Lin and the others. So he immediately stepped forward and positioned himself in front of Lin and the others. Ha ha ha! As expected of the small war gods of the Celestial Court. Even the two holy disciples of the Blood Tribe have been subdued by you. We've really struck gold this time. Emperor Deng glowered at him. Celestial Arch, release them at once. Those are the holy disciples of our tribe. Do you really want a war to break out between the Blood Tribe and the human race? The importance of the holy disciples was unfathomable. They were chosen by the Blood Patriarch, and to a certain extent, they could even be considered as direct descendants of the Blood Patriarch. If Emperor Deng encountered the two holy disciples and was killed or abducted right under his nose, not only would his reputation plummet, he might even be held accountable by the other emperors. These two holy disciples tried to kill me in the past, so why are they letting me go just like that? And Lin chuckled coldly as he pressed his evil-slaying sword against Cassidy's slender neck. Emperor Deng could tell what Lin was implying, and he gritted his teeth. All right, tell me, what do you want in exchange for their release? Hearing this, Lin pondered for a moment before transmitting his voice to the Celestial Arch. I'm short on money. This matter had to be spoken by the person with the most authority here. The Celestial Arch instantly understood, and he chuckled as he replied, 10 million spirit stones per head. Hand it over now. You. Emperor Deng's eyes widened, and the space around him trembled with rage. This is daylight robbery. Could it be that the head of a holy disciple isn't even worth 10 million spirit stones? The Celestial Thearch's mocking smile did not diminish in the slightest. His smile struck Emperor Deng with a sense of humiliation. The head of a high and mighty holy disciple of the Blood Tribe was indeed worth 10 million spirit stones. If the holy disciples were being looked down upon, then he, the Emperor of the Blood Tribe, would also be devalued. He really couldn't accept this injustice. All right, I agree. Emperor Deng heaved a long sigh. He had initially wanted to say that the storage rings of the two holy disciples were still here, so they could be used as spoils of war. Why did he have to pay? However, if he were to say that, he would most likely lose all of his dignity as a Blood Tribe emperor. Emperor Deng pulled out 2,000 vital stones from his storage ring with a pained expression before tossing them toward the Celestial Arch. The Celestial Arch didn't even look at them before tossing them to Lin. Take them as payment for your service. He didn't even take a second glance at something worth 20 million spirit stones. Instead, he tossed it to Lin as if it were a tip. Compared to Emperor Deng, the difference between him and Emperor Deng was clear to see. Emperor Deng was seething with rage. He was the one who had to bleed, but the Celestial Arch was the one who had to flex. And Lin was also filled with admiration as he humbly tried to emulate the Celestial Thearch's disposition. He accepted the 20 million spirit stones with an elated expression. His target of 100 million spirit stones had been achieved. He really didn't think that his underling would be able to play such an important role in a life and death situation like this. He was very pleased. Thinking about it from another perspective, Cassidy and Tobias still loved him. They had traveled such a long distance to become his hostages, then swindled Emperor Deng out of a ransom of 20 million spirit stones. What was this? She was obviously here to give him warmth. And Lin couldn't help but burst into laughter with this in mind. Emperor Yi Deng's eyes burned with boundless fury upon seeing and Lin's expression. Now, why aren't you releasing our holy disciples? And Lin's heart jolted with shock upon seeing Emperor Yi Deng's expression, and he transmitted his voice to the Celestial Arch. I don't feel safe. The Celestial Arch instantly understood, and he turned to Emperor Yi Deng with a smile. Not yet. In order to ensure the safety of our Celestial Court's members, you have to swear a Tao Heart oath that you won't seek revenge on Enlin in the future. That's impossible. I must avenge my son. Emperor Yi Deng roared with rage. The power of the divine Tao began to surge within his body, and he was clearly going to fight with all his might. Enlin transmitted his voice to the Celestial Arch. Let me progress to the return to Void Stage first, and then he can seek revenge however he wants. A faint smile appeared on the Celestial Thearch's face as he looked at Emperor Yi Deng. All right, I'll give you a chance to seek revenge. You don't have to wait too long either. Let Enlin progress to the return to Void Stage first, and you can seek revenge however you want. We won't blame you for bullying the weak. How about that? Emperor Yi Deng was fuming with rage. He was flexing again. All right, it's settled then. Emperor Yi Deng swore a Tao Heart oath that he wouldn't attack Enlin before he reached the return to Void Stage. Will that really be fine? He's a Tao integration stage, super mighty figure. The Celestial Arch transmitted his voice to Enlin. Don't worry, I've fought more than 1 or 2 Tao integration stage, super mighty figures. After I reach the return to Void Stage, I'll be able to kill 1 or 2 Tao integration stage, super mighty figures as practice. Enlin's expression was extremely calm. The Celestial Thearch's heart jolted upon hearing this. He was being intimidated. He was a kindred spirit. Enlin put away his blood soul cross before releasing Cassidy and Tobias to return to Emperor Yi Deng's side. Enlin, don't think this is over. Tobias's expression darkened. Cassidy placed one hand on her hip and pointed at Enlin with the other. Next time, I'll capture you, torture your consciousness, and suck your blood dry. Enlin pursed his lips. He felt like Cassidy was telling the truth. Let's go. Emperor Yi Deng harumphed coldly before leading the way. Cassidy, Tobias, and Feng Wein hurriedly followed along in fear that they would be captured again if they were too slow. These mighty figures of the blood race, who were powerful enough to shake an entire region, ran away with their faces ashen. Emperor Yi Deng came to his senses and recalled that not only had he failed to exact revenge, but he had also lost 20 million spirit stones. He was instantly enraged. He slammed a palm into the ground in rage. Boom! An aura of death surged for over 50 kilometers, and the earth cracked open as countless lives were lost. At the border of the dark marshlands, Enlin looked up at the Celestial Arch with reverence in his eyes. This was the second time. The Celestial Arch had descended like a heavenly god to save him from a dire situation. Countless words converged into one sentence. Thank you, Flex King. Chapter 1104. The Celestial Arch still had a nonchalant smile on his face, but his expression darkened upon hearing Enlin's words. Who are you calling the Flex Monarch? Enlin's heart jolted upon hearing this. He had been too excited just then and had accidentally revealed his true thoughts. He was in deep T now. The Celestial Arch spoke in a meaningful and heartfelt voice. The Celestial Court represents the dignity of a human race, so we naturally have to put on a brave front in order to avoid being looked down upon. Everything I'm doing is for the sake of the human race, and Lin nodded. I understand. The Celestial Arch was flexing for the sake of the human race. What a lofty and noble ideal. It had risen to a completely different level, and Lin felt like this was something he could learn from. Celestial Arch, I'm really sorry to have troubled you again, Su Xiaolan said with an apologetic expression. Huh, and Lin is a troublemaker. I'm not used to him not stirring up some trouble. I'm glad you're fine. The Celestial Arch chuckled in response. And Lin was a little embarrassed upon hearing this. The celestial arch turned to Enlin and Su Xiaolan with a meaningful gaze. Besides, Emperor Yi Deng is so enraged. You must have killed a lot of blood tribe cultivators for the sake of the human race, right? That's a good thing. Tell me in detail what you've done this time. Hearing this, Enlin gave a brief recount of the events that had transpired. The celestial thearch's heart jolted upon hearing this, and he re-evaluated Enlin and Su Xiaolan's combat prowess. They had ventured deep into the enemy's lair, killed several return to void stage mighty figures, and slain over 1,000 blood tribe powerful beings. Just this courage alone was worthy of admiration. Thinking back, how long had it been since he had been this hot-blooded? Let's go home, the celestial arch said. Enlin and Su Xiaolan were moved once again upon hearing this. It was a very simple sentence, but it struck them with a sense of reliability and safety. Just like that, the two of them returned to Lincoln City with the celestial arch. At the top of Lincoln City, the homeroom teacher, the flying sword god, had originally planned to properly reprimand this willful student after Enlin returned. Then he saw Enlin and the celestial arch flying back, laughing and chatting. Flying sword god. However, he couldn't bring himself to reprimand her. He respectfully stepped forward and bowed to the celestial emperor. The other students were extremely excited. They didn't expect to see the legendary celestial emperor here, and they all went up to pay their respects. At the same time, they couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. The gap between people was really big. When they were still idling on the city wall, and Lin was already chatting happily with the celestial arch. As a matter of fact, the celestial arch had personally escorted Lin and Su Xiaolan back. This was simply off the charts. The celestial arch chatted with the teachers and students on the city wall for a while before departing. Not only was he warm and gentle, but he was also ethereal and aloof, giving off the feeling that he was a super powerful being. And Lin committed this information to memory. After that, it was time for idling again. The Blood Tribe army didn't dare to come to Lincoln City, and the soldiers of Lincoln City didn't attack either. Thus, everyone just sat there peacefully. Miao Tian, Luo Zipping, Zhong Yongyin, and the others pestered Lin, asking him to recount his heroic deeds in the Blood Tribe. And Lin had no choice but to continue flexing and recount his heroic deeds. The incident at the Bone Demon Blood Sect soon shook the entire Dark Marshlands and even spread to the entire Taichu continent. The death of 4 return to Void Stage mighty figures was considered a major event on the Taichu continent. After that, Emperor Yi Deng intentionally spread the name of the main culprit, Enlin, in order to lay the groundwork for him to kill Enlin in the future. Thus, Enlin became famous again. His name once again entered the eyes of all the powers on the Taichu continent. In the past 2 years, there had been quite a lot of big news regarding Enlin. Even in the boundless Taichu continent, where there were countless prodigies, he could be considered as one of the most dazzling stars. He had founded a powerful sect at such a young age, and his combat prowess was unparalleled. He had even mastered the core tribulation transcendence technique. What kind of supremely talented young prodigy could achieve what he had achieved? All of a sudden, the name Enlin not only became the idol of all the young cultivators, but he also became the idol of countless female cultivators. News of what had happened in the Dark Marshlands had even spread to the distant West Sea. In the depths of the West Sea, within the Sea Heart Palace. As expected of a young hero, Lan Xingyang chortled with glee as he read a piece of news. The super heavenly lightning god really does strike wherever he goes. He's starting to bully the Blood Tribe now. Lan Xiaoni was a little concerned. Will he attract the attention of the Blood Tribe, Doubt integration stage mighty figures? Lan Xingyang looked at his daughter with a smile. Do you still not have confidence in your big boss? Besides, the bomb I gave him hasn't even been used yet. He could sense whether the bomb was used or not. That's true. Big Boss Enlin is the best. Lan Xiaoni's feeble expression was replaced by one of determination. What we have to do now is to unite the forces of the West Sea and become Big Boss Enlin's backup force. Lan Xingyang nodded with elation. Enlin's appearance had made his daughter grow up quite a bit. He sighed with emotion. working for the heavens. This is a new path, right? Under a vast expanse of darkness, a gargantuan floating continent was slowly drifting through the air. During the day, they existed in a dark space, and at night, they appeared in the air above the Tai Chu continent, absorbing the power of stars between heaven and earth to cultivate. This was the territory of the Darkwing tribe, the floating continent. At this moment, all of the Darkwing tribe cultivators were busy with post-war reconstruction work. The battle between Black Spirit Snake and the Darkwing Emperor had been earth-shattering, and the entire continent had almost been destroyed by them. As such, the reconstruction work was also quite extensive. What? You want me to pay 10 million spirit stones for a casual job? You've gone too far. Grandmaster Construction Cultivator. The Darkwing Emperor hung up the voice transmission talisman with rage and fell silent again as he looked down at his imperial castle, which had been sliced in half. It was simply too painful to repair it. Just the imperial castle alone cost 10 million spirit stones. How depressing. They had only fought one battle, and they were already suffering such heavy financial losses. The Darkwing Emperor sat in his chair with a gloomy expression. At this time, a gentle and beautiful woman with skin as white as the moon and long black hair that fell to her knees walked into the imperial palace with light steps. The Darkwing Emperor's expression eased slightly upon seeing her, and a smile appeared on his face. Moonlit Knight Monarch, why are you back? How are things going with the evil slaying sword? The Moonlit Knight Monarch was his most trusted aide, and she was also the monarch with the highest completion rate. If there was anyone who could make him feel better, it would be this monarch. The Darkwing Emperor trusted this monarch very much, and he had always had high expectations for her. The Moonlit Knight Monarch's expression was cold as she held a stack of newspapers and intelligence reports in her hands. I'm not doing this mission anymore. Darkwing Emperor. What a heart-piercing Moonlit Knight. Chapter 1105. The Moonlit Knight Monarch's words reverberated in the Darkwing Emperor's ears. The Blackwing Emperor, who had finally managed to hear some good news, nearly vomited a mouthful of blood. You're quitting the mission? What's wrong, Moonlit Knight Monarch? The Darkwing Emperor was perplexed. The Moonlit Knight Monarch tossed a pile of information toward the Darkwing Emperor expressionlessly. I don't want to die. The Darkwing Emperor. The Emperor carefully read through the information gathered by the Moonlit Knight Monarch, and his expression gradually darkened. What a heart-wrenching sight. At the end of the information was the Moonlit Knight Monarch's conclusion. Enlin's power level returned to Void Final Stage. 2 mighty figures at the Return to Void Pinnacle Stage were required to kill Enlin, and one of them had to be cannon fodder. The Darkwing Emperor stared at the information and analysis before him, but he couldn't find any reason to retort. For years. It's only been 4 years. The Darkwing Emperor's hands trembled as he held the information. I've never been an idiot to send minions to help him level up. I used a Return to Void Stage, True Monarch, right from the get-go. But why did I still lose? His heart was so stifled. Why couldn't anything go his way? The Moonlit Knight Monarch offered words of consolation. You can't be blamed for this. Enlin is simply too uncanny. His power is growing at an unfathomable rate, not to mention the special power hidden within his body. I really can't complete this mission. I'm willing to accept any punishment. The Moonlit Knight Monarch expressed her stance again. She had a carefree personality, but that didn't mean she didn't have a mind of her own. On the contrary, once she made up her mind on something, she wouldn't change her mind easily. The Darkwing Emperor felt like he was about to throw up a mouthful of blood. He hoped that the Moonlit Knight Monarch would be able to kill Enlin and take back the evil-slaying sword. However, a few years later, she gave up on the mission using fear of death as an excuse. And then Enlin became a big boss. What the F***CK? My head hurts. The Darkwing Emperor felt like not only had he been bullied by Black Spirit Snake, but he had also been bullied by a junior like Enlin. Guards, summon all the monarchs. The Darkwing Emperor roared. On the monarch castle, 11 engravings lit up. This meant that the Darkwing tribe had a total of 11 Return to Void Final Stage monarchs. That's right, there were already 11 true monarchs who had attained the power of the divine Tao. Many powerful, true monarchs tore open the dimension and arrived at the Emperor's order. Soon, 11 returned to void. Final stage powerful beings had gathered in the palace. The moonlit night monarch ranked third or second among all of the monarchs present, and any one of the monarchs present was powerful enough to kill Lin. The Darkwing Emperor circulated the information that Yu Yi had gathered among the true monarchs. The true monarchs were confused, but they still looked carefully. The more they looked, the more shocked they became. A handsome man looked as if he had just survived a disaster. The Moonlit Night Monarch has decided to give up on the mission of killing Lin and retrieving the evil-slaying sword. Which one of you is willing to accept the mission? The Darkwing Emperor asked. Hearing this, all the monarchs cried out in alarm. The Moonlit Night Monarch, who had never failed a mission before, was actually giving up on it. The handsome man wanted to clap his hands upon seeing this, as if he had found a soulmate. He was the Starry Night Monarch who had accepted the mission and then given up on it. As a result, the Starry Night Monarch was punished to supply energy to the Heart of Darkness for 100 years, but he had no regrets. This time, he had snuck out during the Emperor's summon, only to find that even the Moonlit Night Monarch had given up on the mission. As expected, he wasn't the only one who knew how precious life was. The Darkwing Emperor's words reverberated throughout the palace, but all of the monarchs hesitated. Emperor, you've seen the Moonlit Night Monarch's analysis. Your mission is basically sending us to our deaths. A hot-tempered monarch chimed in. That's right. Where are we going to find return to void, final stage cannon fodder? Mighty figures of that level are all scheming and scheming. Who would be stupid enough to sacrifice themselves? Another monarch chimed in. Could it be that the Darkwing Emperor is telling us to team up, with one responsible for killing him and the other responsible for sending ourselves to our deaths? What a vicious boss. Darkwing Emperor, this mission is a suicidal one. I remember you telling us in the past that our lives are the most important thing in this world. We have always been abiding by this priceless advice. Could it be that you have forgotten about it? A true king lamented in pain. Just like that, the group of true monarchs became excited and started a heated discussion among themselves. All of the discussions pointed toward one central idea, which was that this mission was too dangerous, and they couldn't do it. The Darkwing Emperor was on the verge of breaking down. Who says we're definitely going to die? Does the Moonlit Night Monarch's analysis have to be correct? Perhaps there are other ways to achieve this goal? Can't you all use your brains? Use their brains? Another round of heated discussion ensued. All of the monarchs agreed that the Moonlit Night Monarch's analysis was very reasonable. Darkwing Emperor, right at this moment, the Moonlit Night Monarch raised her head and bowed slightly. Moonlit Night has a suggestion. The Darkwing Emperor's expression eased. Please speak. The mysterious power within Lin's body will only be triggered when he's on the brink of death. As long as we don't endanger his life, there shouldn't be any life-threatening danger. The Moonlit Night Monarch's voice was as refreshing as a clear spring. The Darkwing Emperor's expression shifted. Moonlit Night Monarch, what do you mean? Only take the sword, not kill. The Moonlit Night Monarch replied. This. The Darkwing Emperor's eyes lit up before his brows furrowed. Are we not going to avenge the Dark Night Monarch? The Moonlit Night Monarch replied in a calm voice. That depends on whether avenging the Dark Night Monarch or the evil-slaying sword is more important. If we only take the sword, then I'm willing to accept another mission. A conflicted expression appeared on the Darkwing Emperor's face before he heaved a forlorn sigh. So be it. We only take the sword, not kill. The reward for the mission remain the same, so I'll leave this mission to Moonlit Night Monarch. I hope you won't disappoint me. All of the monarchs' hearts jolted upon hearing this, and they couldn't help but look at the Moonlit Night Monarch with envy. If they only took the sword and didn't kill, then the difficulty of this mission would plummet. One had to realize that they would receive a divine fruit and Tao inheritance light upon completing this mission. This was a huge boon. Some of the more impatient monarchs even wanted to yell, "Give up on that mission and let me do it. Thank you for your trust, Your Majesty." The Moonlit Night extended an indifferent salute to express her gratitude. She stepped forward and disappeared into the darkness of the night. The Darkwing Emperor glowered at the other 10 monarchs. Meeting adjourned. Chapter 1106. Lincoln City. And Lin was lying on the city wall, basking in the moonlight. Su Xiaolan sat beside Lin with her eyes tightly shut as she silently refined the holy flames within her body. Xiaolan, do you think I'll conquer the entire Dark Marshlands one day? Lin suddenly asked. Su Xiaolan opened her eyes upon hearing Lin's words. Her eyes reflected the starry sky, and it was as if a vermilion bird were soaring into the sky to soar through the myriad of worlds. I think you can, and it won't be too late, Su Xiaolan replied with conviction. She had never doubted Lin's abilities. However, she was still afraid that someone important to her would be in danger during this process. Have you really decided to do this? Su Xiaolan asked, and Lin heaved a faint sigh. I've already issued the mission. There's no turning back now. That's right, they were preparing to make a big move. Within the demonic slaughter space, and Lin had already extracted 1,000 milliliters of holy blood and handed it to Cassidy and Tobias for them to develop. Never underestimate 1,000 milliliters of holy blood. That was the most alluring thing to the Blood Tribe. They would first target the people close to them, then the Blood Tribe mighty figures who weren't too vicious, and then they would gradually expand their influence. After a year, all of the Blood Tribe cultivators who had been influenced by the holy blood would gather together and undergo the servant ceremony of Enlin. If things went smoothly, perhaps half of the Dark Marshlands would fall under Enlin's control. Sigh, I actually just want to be an ordinary cultivator. Why is it that the more I go down this path, the more I'm straying from it? I'm starting to regret creating that holy blood cult. Lin wore a disconsolate expression. Su Xiaolan rolled her eyes. If you think about it this way, wouldn't it be safer to develop the holy blood cult for the sake of the human race and turn our enemies into our servants? Lin's expression changed upon hearing this, and he couldn't help but exclaim, Impressive, Xiaolan. You've also learned to apply what you've learned. What do you mean? Su Xiaolan asked blankly. For the sake of the human race's prosperity. Lin gestured with his hands. This was the lofty idea of the celestial ruler. Lin just remembered it, but he didn't expect Su Xiaolan to see through it. Su Xiaolan, what was the point of unifying the Dark Marshlands? Lin had been confused before, but now that he thought about it, wasn't it to make the human race safer and the continent more harmonious? With his lofty ideals as his guide, he was immediately filled with motivation. Lin looked up at the stars. Perhaps my happiest days were when I sold a steamer of buns for 1,000 spirit stones. But for the sake of the human race, I will carry this heavy burden forward and fight endlessly. Su Xiaolan silently slapped her forehead. There were too many things to complain about, and she didn't want to say anything. By the way, Xiaolan, can I learn more about our parents now? Lin asked with a buoyant smile. A blush appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. How can you try to get close to them like that? They're my parents. You've pissed off more than a few Dao integration stage super mighty figures anyway. But you have to promise me that you'll listen to me and don't do anything rash. Lin immediately made a promise. Su Xiaolan waved the crimson bracelet on her wrist with a smile. This is a relic of my mother, the vermilion bird bracelet. You haven't forgotten about it, have you? Lin nodded. Of course I have. Back at the Vermilion Bird sect, after Su Xiaolan had obtained the Vermilion Bird bracelet, she had told him that it was something that had belonged to her mother. At that time, Lin had been keeping an eye out for her, and he was planning to go and help her with some matters when he could take care of himself. My mother's name is Zhu Yishuang, and she's the younger sister of the current sect leader of the Vermilion Bird sect, Zhu Shuza. Back when Sidu Feng was still the sect leader, both of them were strong contenders for the position of sect leader. Su Xiaolan began to recount her story. Lin cooperatively brought out some high-quality, immortal wine from his storage ring, and the two of them chatted as they drank. My mother and my uncle's aptitude was about the same, and they both progressed to the return to void stage at almost the same time. After that, they were invited by the Celestial Court to enter the ancient Tai Chu realm. In the Void Star section of the ancient Tai Chu realm, my mother and my father met for the first time. That must have been an unforgettable encounter. And Lin chimed in after taking a sip of wine. Su Xiaolan nodded. That's right, it was quite an unforgettable encounter. The two of them fought over a pile of realm essence crystals, and my mother almost killed my father. PFFF. And Lin spat out a mouthful of wine. Aren't the unforgettable stories we understand a little different from each other? Su Xiaolan couldn't help but smile upon seeing Lin's dumbstruck expression. She placed her slender hands behind her back and looked up at the night sky with a reminiscent look in her eyes as she continued to speak. After that, my mother stole the realm essence crystals. Out of kindness, she didn't kill my father and left just like that. After about a dozen or so days, my mother accidentally fell into a perilous realm and was unable to escape. It was my father who sacrificed an extremely precious mystic treasure to save her. Perhaps it was at that time that my father and mother finally met and became friends. And Lin sighed with emotion. No discord, no concord. A good marriage always starts with the kindness of one party. He turned to look at Su Xiaolan as he spoke. He didn't know anything when he first entered the university, but wasn't it Su Xiaolan who took him step by step on the path of cultivation? Their marriage had begun from Su Xiaolan's expression of goodwill. Su Xiaolan blushed slightly as she sensed in Lin's scorching gaze. After that, my father and my mother searched for opportunities in the ancient Tai Chu realm together. They helped and supported each other in times of danger, and they gradually developed feelings for each other. Even after they left the ancient Tai Chu realm, their relationship continued to grow. Thus, as time passed, their relationship grew stronger and stronger, and they became more and more important in each other's hearts. One day, my grandfather, Ao Meng, discovered the relationship between my father and my mother. My grandfather vehemently opposed this marriage, and he even threatened to sever their ties. And Lin couldn't help but grumble. What a melodramatic plot. Our mom is extremely talented, and she could even become the future sect leader of the Vermilion Bird sect. Where did her parents find the courage to oppose her? Su Xiaolan explained, because my father is a member of the dragon tribe. Relationships between humans and dragons have always been forbidden. Not only is it extremely difficult for them to have children, but the children will also die due to the conflict between the two bloodlines. Also, there's big sister Shanine. She forced a phoenix and a true dragon to fail the Dao integration stage, which dealt a heavy blow to the dragon tribe. My father is also a mighty figure who has a chance of progressing to the Dao integration stage, and Grandpa Ao Meng was very adamant in his opposition to this marriage. And Lin heaved a forlorn sigh. How did they overcome this obstacle? Su Xiaolan smiled. After that, my mother fought her way into the dragon court of the eastern seas and beat all of the dragon tribe cultivators into submission before forcibly taking my father away. And Lin's mouth gaped open in astonishment. Is she that bad *SS? What a peerlessly domineering move. I can almost see a peerlessly beautiful woman looking down upon all the dragons in the world. He felt like the two of them had gotten the wrong script. Wait, and Lin suddenly realized something, and he drew a sharp intake of breath. Grandpa Ao Meng, the dragon core of the eastern seas? He turned with difficulty to look at Su Xiaolan. You mean the dragon king of the eastern seas? Ao Meng? Who else could it be? Su Xiaolan blinked. And Lin, I almost killed your grandpa. He suddenly sighed with emotion. Su Xiaolan. Chapter 1107. Are you talking about the battle at the Flying Ball Tribe Mine? Su Xiaolan was speechless, and Lin nodded with lingering fear in his heart. That's right. I was so angry at the time that I really wanted to kill Ao Meng. Thinking about it now, I'm still a little scared. He had almost killed Su Xiaolan's grandfather. Wasn't that the equivalent of almost killing his own father-in-law? At the time, he was beating him up as if he were his own son. Speaking of which, Su Xiaolan possessed both a true dragon and a phoenix bloodline right from the get-go. He should have thought of this a long time ago, but it was just that he couldn't see the bigger picture. Su Xiaolan immediately offered words of consolation upon seeing Lin's expression. You don't have to blame yourself. Ever since my father was taken away by my mother, he severed all ties with Ao Ming and left the Dragon Court. Hence, even I no longer have any ties with the Dragon Court. The Dragon Court won't acknowledge me, and I don't want to acknowledge the Dragon Court. And Lin nodded upon hearing this. Speaking of which, Ao Ming's attitude toward his own children is really weird. It's really hard to imagine that your father was forced to leave just like that. Su Xiaolan took a sip of wine and shook her head. Wasn't the 4'9" immortal sex little dragon princess, Bai Lian, also forced to leave? My grandfather, Ao Ming, has a knack for forcing his own children away. The two of them looked at each other and burst into laughter as they spoke. Su Xiaolan had never met Ao Ming, so she naturally didn't have any feelings for him. As for the Dragon King of the East Sea, Ao Ming's weird way of thinking was really quite hilarious. Perhaps this is the downside of having too many children. They clearly don't have time to pay attention to their children's thoughts, but they still act like they're doing everything for their children's sake and dictate their lives. And Lin concluded. Su Xiaolan heaved a forlorn sigh. After my father severed all ties with the Dragon Court, he changed his name from Ao Guanyu to Su Guanyun. And Lin laughed. No wonder your surname isn't Ao. Su Xiaolan sounds better. Su Xiaolan pursed her lips into a smile. After that, my father and mother got married, and they lived happily ever after in the Vermilion Bird sect. According to some of the stories, this should be the grand finale, the end of the book. However, and Lin knew that this was only the beginning of the story. The real story began. Su Xiaolan stretched out her fair and delicate hand and said in a charming voice, I'm thirsty. Bring me some precious fruits. And Lin immediately took out a first-grade spirit fruit and obediently handed it over. Please enjoy, your highness. Be a good boy, Luanzi. Su Xiaolan accepted the spirit fruit with a dainty smile before taking a few bites. We lived a happy life for a long time. The legend is true. My parents lived together for so long, but they couldn't give birth to me. And Lin instantly became nervous upon hearing this, but he didn't know what he was nervous about. To put it in a more scientific way, it's because of reproductive isolation between different species. The sperm and the egg don't belong to the same species, so how are they supposed to fuse? Su Xiaolan explained with a serious expression. A rare shy expression appeared on Lin's face. Then what should we do? He finally understood what he was nervous about. This was a problem that he and Xiaolan had to face as well. To put it more accurately, Xiaolan was also half a dragon tribe member. If Lin and Su Xiaolan were to be together, wouldn't they also have to face this problem when giving birth in the future? Hence, this was an extremely important problem. What should we do? A light blush appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. My parents went to the Purple Star and Fertility Department for treatment, and they finally solved this problem. On Lin, everyone suddenly fell silent. Why did it feel like there was a peculiar change in the atmosphere? On Lin, I'll go ask Bai Ling some other day. Don't worry, I still have the pill recipe, but the ingredients are very difficult to find. Su Xiaolan blushed as she said, Take the pill and improve your constitution, and you'll be fine. And Lin heaved a sigh of relief upon hearing this. No problem. No matter what ingredients you need, I and Lin will be able to obtain them. After that, my parents expended a lot of time and effort in order to nurture my overly powerful Khanate true dragon and phoenix bloodlines. Only then did they find the correct method to prevent my bloodline from self-destructing, thereby saving my life. Su Xiaolan sighed with emotion. She was clearly also feeling a little melancholic about the trials and tribulations of this world. Lin obediently shifted his body to allow Su Xiaolan to lean on his shoulder. He couldn't help but become nervous. Then the nurturing you mentioned, Su Xiaolan, I have the pill recipe. Lin heaved a sigh of relief. A smile appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. In any case, I grew up healthily. My father taught me dragon tribe spell techniques, and my mother taught me fire type spell techniques. My aptitude was good to begin with, and I also had dual bloodlines, so I naturally progressed rapidly in my cultivation. She was actually the stereotype of a prodigy. She had a good background, a good sect, good parents, good aptitude, and lived like a princess. My mother was very fierce. She would beat me whenever I slacked off, and I cried at least a dozen times. In order to train my courage, she would even release some very scary mutant beasts to scare me. On the contrary, my father was the most gentle person. He was also very good at coaxing me, and he looked very good when he smiled. And Lin nodded. That's a pretty good guess. Zhu Yishuang was someone who would overturn the dragon court and forcibly take Su Guanyin away. It wasn't difficult to guess the personalities of her parents. Su Xiaolan slowly recounted her past, and Lin listened with an earnest expression, trying to understand her past. Su Xiaolan spoke with an extremely earnest expression, as if she was going to tell the man beside her about all of the ups and downs she had experienced over the past few years. When I was 12 years old, my parents and second uncle traveled to the void spirit realm in search of an energy crystal that could repress the violent power of the holy vermilion flame. However, they were targeted by two Dao integration stage void spirit tribe mighty figures who wanted to devour their consciousness. Su Xiaolan clenched her fists, and her body trembled uncontrollably as she thought back to this past event. And Lin drew Su Xiaolan into his arms and consoled her in a gentle voice. He could already guess the outcome at this point. One of the vermilion bird origin treasures is known as the vermilion bird wings. It's a one-time life-saving treasure that can unleash a vermilion bird spatial movement technique for a short period of time. Even Dao integration stage mighty figures won't be able to stop it. It's a pity that this spatial movement technique can only teleport one person. It was the second vermilion bird origin treasure that my mother obtained. My mother didn't use it for herself, nor did she give it to my father. Instead, she gave the vermilion bird wings to my second uncle and asked him to take good care of me. Su Xiaolan had already begun to sob as she spoke. They left me forever just like that. It was so sudden. They didn't even say goodbye. They disappeared from my life just like that. No one taught me true dragon spell techniques anymore. My uncle and second uncle taught me fire-type spell techniques, but they wouldn't beat me, curse at me, or use monsters to scare me. I was very obedient and tried my best to live my life. I tried my best to smile so that my family wouldn't worry about me, and I tried my best to be a sensible and outstanding woman. Other people would praise me, but the person I wanted to hear praised the most would never appear. Su Xiaolan wept as she spoke, releasing all of the emotions that had been pent up in her heart for many years. Her uncle and second uncle were very concerned about her, and they loved her very much. But how could this kind of care replace the position of her parents? And Lin silently wiped away Su Xiaolan's tears. Su Xiaolan wept for a while before carefully pulling out a photographic crystal and injecting vital energy into it. An image began to appear before her eyes. This was a group photo of a family of 3 wearing intricate red, vermilion bird robes. A beautiful woman was smiling with one hand resting on the man's shoulder and the other holding onto the little one's hand. The man with dragon horns had a shy and gentle smile on his face, and he was also holding onto the little one's hand. Little Su Xiaolan stood in the center with her hair tied up in a bun. She was holding onto the little one's hand, and there was an extremely warm and joyful smile on her face. Chapter 1108. I feel like a salted fish. I didn't do anything except stand on the city wall for a dozen or so days. There were still 2 days until the clown's wedding, and many guests had already arrived. On the blessed land with blue skies and green grass, strange beasts and mounts could be seen frequently, and immortals could be seen riding on clouds and riding on a mist. It was a lively and bustling scene. Miao Tian. This was the last day of the end-of-term examinations. That's right, the renowned 4-9 immortal sect of the Kingdom of the 9 States was about to hold their wedding. She turned her head and glared at the people in the distance. And Lin's heart was stirred, and he was a little entranced by this scene. Students, make sure to rest well. After that, the two of them chatted about the past as they passed through the night. She smiled. Of course, our entire family is top-notch in terms of looks. There was a road paved with roses, which was particularly eye-catching on the lush green landscape. It was like a path of happiness that led all the way to the legendary immortal sect. This grudge, he silently took out a small notebook and noted it down. Flying Sword God's chest constricted at the sight of Enlin. Su Xiaolan recounted the past to Enlin, and her emotions were finally released. Perhaps she was also a little exhausted, and she unknowingly fell asleep in Enlin's arms. On a vast grassland, there were 2 Dao integration stage Void Spirit Tribe mighty figures. This was the second grand ceremony held by the 4-9 Immortal sect after the grand opening ceremony. Perhaps it was because it was more famous now, but the scale of this grand ceremony was even larger than the grand opening ceremony. Many of the students still had 0 accolades on their heads. They were simply too powerful. What a warm and beautiful family. This was also why Zhu Shuza was unable to exact revenge even after becoming the sect leader of the Vermilion Bird sect. This was also why Su Xiaolan had repeatedly told Enlin not to act rashly and to listen to her. Wah, teacher, 0 is so ugly. Can you let me pass? I'm not asking for much. Just give me 60 points. Any less and any more wasted. Miao Tian pouted and tugged on Flying Sword God's sleeve like a spoiled child. She told Enlin that the 2 Void Spirit Tribe mighty figures were called the God Engulfing Skeleton and Ember. Enlin rode on Dabai and greeted his classmates warmly. The homeroom teacher thought to himself as he nibbled on the steamed buns that Enlin gave him that Dabai ignored. Do you think your leader here for inspection? At this time, Enlin and the others were on their way. Good morning. Enlin smiled. No, I woke up a little earlier than you. Enlin chuckled. The next day, the sun rose. By the way, do you think I look more like my father or my mother? Su Xiaolan turned to look at Enlin with her bright eyes. Su Xiaolan smiled shyly and blissfully. Good morning. You didn't sleep last night? All of the students were on the verge of tears upon hearing Enlin's words. Class President Xinyuan Chung had accidentally annihilated the entire Blood Tribe army, and they didn't even get to touch the Blood Tribe soldiers. Zhu Shuza didn't reveal their identities in order to prevent Su Xiaolan from coming into contact with them too early. Su Xiaolan nodded upon hearing this and began to meditate. He was actually lying. It was a rare opportunity to hug Xiaolan, so he wasn't going to waste it on sleeping. Thank you for your hard work, students. Awards were given out every year, but weddings only happened once in a lifetime. This scene was really heartwarming, and Lin thought to himself for a moment before replying, You look like your father when you're living, but you look like your mother when you're fighting. And Lin and Su Xiaolan began to ponder about whether to go to the 4-9 Immortal sect. Wah, Big Brother, and said he was going to flex with us and fly with us. Why is he flexing by himself? And Lin looked up at the vast starry sky, and a determined expression appeared on his face as he took a deep breath. And Lin sighed with emotion. Xiaolan, you were so adorable when you were little. You had such a beautiful smile. Our parents also had beautiful smiles. Emperor Yidang had already spread the news of what Enlin and Su Xiaolan had done in the Dark Marshlands, so everyone knew about it. 4 returned to Void Stage mighty figures, and over 1,000 Blood Tribe powerful beings had been annihilated. Xiao Chao's wedding was taking place the day after tomorrow, and this was an extremely important event that they couldn't afford to delay. Enlin conversed with all of the students in a friendly manner. Enlin wasn't going to do anything rash. He had to break through to the return to Void Stage first. Purple Star State. The students of the first class had created a legend of 0 casualties. This mighty figure's accolades were probably going to defy the heavens. As a powerful being on the Immortal Rankings board, Miao Tian felt extremely aggrieved to have received a 0. However, when she thought about how even a prodigy like Su Qianyin had received a 0, she felt a little better. In the end, they decided to have their homeroom teacher collect the individual awards from the school. In reality, filthy rich and didn't really care about the awards. After being praised, Su Xiaolan's grief faded. Miao Tian was speechless. The atmosphere was extremely harmonious. The Flying Sword God naturally knew how to handle matters like this, so he was extremely accommodating. I did get tan, but it wasn't hard at all. They discussed for a while. He was a renowned monarch who ruled over an entire realm. Even among Dao, integration stage, super mighty figures, he was one of the most powerful beings in the world. Enlin, Su Xiaolan, Xinyuan Chung, Su Qinyun, Miao Tian, and the others applied for leave before heading to the 4-9 Immortal sect to prepare for the wedding. Not only were there human sect representatives participating, but there were also many powerful beings from other powers on the continent participating as well. It was like a world-class wedding. Thus, Xianyuan Cheng and Lin and Su Xiaolan received full marks, while everyone else received 0 marks. Everyone began their journey back. And Lin didn't need to cultivate, so he rode to Bai around the city wall and began a new patrol. They all greeted Lin with admiration and envy upon seeing him. At the same time, he had also created a record of over 90% of the students receiving 0 marks. A wry smile appeared on the Flying Sword God's face. Don't worry, this end-of-semester examination is a special occasion, so you'll all graduate. However, I have to be realistic about the marks. Besides, everyone received 0 marks, so it's quite harmonious. What's so bad about it? All of you are tanned. However, after Su Xiaolan came of age, she used some methods to find out about this. Even though he was handing out an immortal pill, he still smiled to show his respect. Thus, the end-of-semester examination drew to a close in such a friendly and harmonious atmosphere. This is the first time I've shown this photographic crystal to anyone. Now, I can only rely on this picture to recall what my parents looked like, Su Xiaolan said in a soft voice. And Lin and Su Xiaolan were even more outrageous. The Bone Demon Blood Sect incident had shaken the southwestern region of the Dark Marshlands, and all Blood Tribe cultivators were in danger. Now, even the students couldn't find a single trace of the Blood Tribe cultivators. Su Xiaolan faltered slightly upon hearing this before bursting into laughter. Faint dimples appeared on her cheeks, and she was clearly amused by Lin's words. Su Xiaolan woke up from Lin's embrace, and a faint blush appeared on her face. She silently left Lin's embrace and leaned against the city wall. This was actually quite easy to investigate. Chapter 1109. And Lin sat on Debai's back and flew toward the teleportation spell formation in the gem state. Behind him were his fellow students who were going to the 4-9 Immortal sect with him to attend Xiao Chao's wedding. Most of them were prodigies who had been poached by Lin to the 4-9 Immortal sect, and the Celestial of the Arch was quite concerned about this. However, the Heavenly Court did not forcibly restrict the departure of these talents. Thus, they could only silently complain and feel stifled. They could not really do anything to them. And Lin, have you asked Xiao Cho what he's missing? I don't even know what to give him this time, Su Xiaolan asked in a quiet voice. And Lin smiled. Didn't you already give him a present at Qing Hu City's wedding? That's different. This is his second wedding, so I have to give him a present. Su Xiaolan replied with a matter-of-fact expression. Just give him something random. We're family, so there's no need to be so formal. And Lin waved a hand. We're family, so how can we be so casual? It's exactly because we're family that we have to take this seriously. Su Xiaolan expressed her opinion. The two of them had differing opinions. In the end, Lin was convinced. Lin, what are you planning to give him? Su Xiaolan asked. Air. Lin faltered slightly upon hearing this. Su Xiaolan stared at Lin. Have you never thought about this? Ha! Of course not. Lin interjected with a smile. I've already prepared a very good present. He would never admit that he had been too preoccupied with thinking about what gifts the sect would receive during the wedding that he had forgotten to send a congratulatory gift to the clown. Su Xiaolan extended a hand. What are you planning to give him? Let me have a look. Lin paused momentarily and was just about to bring out something good when the evil-slaying sword in his storage ring suddenly began to tremor and surge with battle intent. An urgent voice sounded in his mind. Be careful. A Darkwing powerhouse is approaching. Lin's expression shifted. A being that could make the evil-slaying sword a powerful being had to be terrifyingly powerful. Hua! The evil-slaying sword appeared in his hand. Su Xiaolan was perplexed upon seeing this. You want to give me the evil-slaying sword? Everyone, be careful. A strong enemy is approaching. Protect yourselves. Lin suddenly shouted, his expression as if he was facing a formidable enemy. Su Qinyun, Xianyuan Cheng, and the others reacted extremely quickly upon hearing this, and they instantly drew their weapons. And Lin leaped down from Dabai's body and released Gundam 3 in Yao Ji. Protect them. This was the first time everyone had seen Lin reveal such an expression, as if he was facing a formidable enemy, and they couldn't help but become even more nervous. The evil slaying sword became even more excited. Don't let me out, let me go back. And Lin faltered momentarily before becoming enraged. I am the sword of the mighty, sword immortal Lin. How can you say something so cowardly? You're such a disappointment. He didn't understand why the evil slaying sword, which had accompanied him through countless battles, would say something so heartfelt. However, he knew that he couldn't afford to lose his composure in the face of such a formidable enemy. He hadn't even cowered yet, so why was his weapon cowering first? The evil slaying sword spoke in a panicked voice. This isn't a question of whether I'm afraid or not. There's no time to explain. Just listen to me. Hurry up. I won't listen, I won't listen. And Lin shook his head with determination. Evil slaying sword, crack. A crisp crack sounded. A pitch-black crack appeared in front of them, and then spread out. A pair of slender, white feet stepped through the spatial rift, following which a lithe and graceful woman in a black dress emerged from the spatial rift. She had a breathtaking beauty with a pair of clear and tranquil eyes. Her skin was as radiant as the crescent moon, and her knee-length dress revealed her flawless calves. The woman's appearance stunned many people. Not only were Dabai and Lin momentarily dazed, but even the top-tier beauties Su Qianyun and Su Xiaolan were also momentarily dazed. It was clearly daytime, but they felt as if they had seen the most beautiful moon. The moon is so beautiful, woof. Dabai couldn't help but praise with his eyes wide open. Of course, the woman's appearance didn't make them lower their guard. The pair of black wings on her back was too conspicuous. Almost in an instant, everyone was able to determine the identity of this woman who had suddenly appeared. She was a dark-winged, tribe-mighty figure. The woman's expression was as cold as the moon, and her eyes suddenly locked onto Lin. A rare seductive smile appeared on her face. Evil slaying sword. Lin, I've finally found you. Lin's heart sank. This dark-winged tribe powerful being was indeed targeting him. A concerned expression appeared on Su Xiaolan's face. She had previously crushed an emergency summon talisman from the Celestial Court. That was the summon talisman from the Celestial Court that she had requested from the Dark Marshland's execution department. Now that the talisman was gone, how was she going to summon her daddy? Xin Yuan Chung was just about to pull out his voice transmission talisman to call for help when the woman in the black dress gripped the air. Boom! Heaven and earth instantly tremored as the space within a radius of 50 kilometers was sealed. This time, not only had his escape route been cut off, but even the connection between his voice transmission talisman and the outside world had been completely severed. Who are you? Lin asked with a grave expression. A friendly smile appeared on the woman's intricate features. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Moonlit Knight, and I don't have any other intentions. I just want to take back the evil-slaying sword that belongs to the Dark-Wing tribe. As long as you hand over the sword, I promise I won't harm any of you. Everyone faltered upon hearing this. They had thought that this Dark-Wing tribe powerful being was here to exact revenge on Lin, but they didn't think that she would actually be plotting against Lin's sword. The Moonlit Knight Monarch was vastly renowned across the entire Tai Chu continent. She was an extremely powerful, mighty figure at the Return to Void pinnacle stage, and she was on the same level as Laden of the Blood Tribe and War God Erlang of the Celestial Court. However, at this moment, the way she phrased it was a little strange. Generally speaking, shouldn't killing and robbing be the correct course of action for powerful beings of this caliber? Why was she using a friendly tone to negotiate with Lin? All they wanted was the sword, and they would leave without harming a single hair on Lin's body. Inexplicably, a thought uncontrollably emerged in everyone's mind. The Moonlit Knight Monarch of the Dark-Wing tribe seemed to be a little cowardly, and Lin faltered slightly upon hearing this. Was she really going to be so easy to negotiate with? The Moonlit Knight Monarch had done a thorough investigation, so she was naturally going to back down. She had a bottom line in her heart, and that was to not force Lin into a corner. The moonlit night monarch had already suffered from being overly cautious in her actions, and that was to raise a boss in the form of Lin. Right now, she was planning to complete this mission as quickly as possible. This was actually the safest way to proceed. You stole the evil slaying sword, so it should belong to the Darkwing tribe. The moonlit night monarch stepped forward, and her intricate foot stomped into the air. Rumble, a suffocating aura erupted forth. The power of the divine Tao instantly proliferated forth, and day turned into night within a radius of over 50 kilometers. Only a pristine white moon hung high in the sky, casting a ray of moonlight upon the moonlit night monarch, making her appear as if she were a noble and holy goddess of the moon. The moonlit night monarch had already given Lin a reason to hand over the evil slaying sword. At the same time, she unleashed a terrifying aura in an attempt to force him to submit. I stole the sword with my own abilities, so how can you say that it belongs to you? And Lin could sense the evil-slaying sword trembling uneasily, and his aura soared as he faced the moonlit night monarch with no fear on his face. Little Xie belongs to me. No one can take her away from me. Chapter 11:10. Lin sighed internally before turning to look at the woman in the fluttering black dress in the distance, and he felt a headache coming on as he didn't know how to get out of this predicament. Boom! The rich green light instantly materialized into a suit of armor that enveloped Lin's entire body, leaving only his head and limbs exposed. Immediately afterward, something even more astonishing happened. This was because 4 moonlit night monarchs with identical auras had suddenly appeared in the air. Lin's hand trembled, and a gash had been sliced open on his left arm, from which blood was gushing out incessantly. The terrifying power of the moon erupted forth, surging through the entire night sky. The power from the fist surged through the air for close to 10 kilometers, causing the earth to crack open and trees to uproot before being torn to shreds by violent gale-force winds. At the same time, Lin's other fist had already fallen. They were all wielding extremely sharp moonlight scythes, which they aimed at different parts of Lin's body, sealing off all of Lin's paths of retreat. Boom! Yao Ji was a puppet that had mastered spatial skipping, and Tina was extremely proficient in the Tao of space. If they combined their powers, there was definitely a chance that they would be able to break through the moonlit night monarch's spatial seal. Lin activated his divine inspection technique and was able to just barely capture the trajectory of the moonlit night monarch's attack. He positioned one hand in front of the scythe and clenched his other hand into a fist before launching it toward the woman in front of him. When the students heard this, they were very tactful and quickly retreated. Her words reverberated through the air, and Lin activated his divine sense to its fullest extent while maintaining his divine inspection technique so that he could react to his enemy's attack as quickly as possible. The moonlit night monarch's black hair danced in the wind, and her slender body was knocked flying for over a kilometer by the terrifying power imbued within Lin's fist. Go, classmate Lin! Su Qianyan cheered in her mellow voice. Lin, you have to be careful. Your life is the most important thing. Su Xiaolan cautioned. His skin began to turn crimson gold, and his aura climbed steadily. Yu Ye's expression changed slightly, and a crescent moon flashed in her black and white eyes. At the critical moment, her head tilted to the side, dodging the most terrifying part of the fist energy. Big brother, we'll be waiting for your safe return. Miao Tian was already trembling in fear, but she still mustered up her courage and yelled. An earth-shattering sound exploded. It was obvious that Lin was at a disadvantage in this battle. But in the next instant, he was stunned again. This was the most troublesome aspect of spatial jumping. Without extremely high attainments in the art of space, one wouldn't even know where the other party would appear and attack from. If she wanted to snatch away Lin's evil slaying sword, it would depend on whether she had the ability or not. Suddenly, an extremely dazzling light illuminated the entire world. Lin hid in the turtle shell and was completely unharmed. Su Xiaolan murmured, Lin is so green. The Moonlit Night Monarch's expression shifted. The Moonlit Night Monarch had been blasted flying for a very long time, and her aura was a little disordered, but she didn't sustain any injuries, and Lynn didn't turn around and merely gave her a thumbs up. For extremely sharp moonlight, slashes landed on the lush green turtle shell from different directions, and an extremely sharp screeching sound rang out. And Lynn finally came to his senses and immediately stowed the evil-slaying sword away into his storage ring. Rather than worrying like this, he might as well put it back into his storage ring. It was like the most powerful spear piercing toward the most powerful shield with no regard for its own safety. The Moonlit Night Monarch's attack also fell at this moment, and Lynn's body was enveloped by an extremely scorching ball of flames, and he transformed into a flaming war god. He was like a blazing sun piercing through the darkness of the divine Tao unleashed by the Moonlit Night Monarch. Crack, you're very powerful, but you're still too weak for me. The Moonlit Night Monarch raised her proud head and stepped into the air, upon which her body instantly disappeared on the spot. Dubai's brows perked up. He felt like this was a very interesting development. Sigh, and Lynn heaved a forlorn sigh. Everyone, and Lynn still couldn't dodge this attack. Spatial skipping. The evil-slaying sword was very touched, and it let loose a torrent of abuse. Are you an idiot? You know she's going to take me from me. Hurry up and put me away. The crimson golden fist was imbued with explosive power, and the space in its wake twisted and warped as a powerful sense of pressure radiated from its fist, causing the air within a radius of several kilometers to liquefy. This evading turtle technique was the core spell technique that Lin had received from Tian Qinji in the Fallen God Tomb. This was the spell technique that a Dao integration stage mighty figure of the Heavenly Turtle tribe was most proud of in the next instant. The Moonlit Night Monarch had already appeared before Lin, and her moonlight scythe slashed toward Lin's waist at an extremely terrifying speed. That's right, that was a turtle shell. If possible, he really didn't want to use this technique again. However, he really couldn't think of any other way to block the Moonlit Night Monarch's attack. The Moonlit Night Monarch's brows furrowed as she felt like things were getting a little troublesome. His head and limbs instantly retracted into the turtle shell. Su Xiaolan's brows furrowed as she felt like things were not as simple as they seemed. Her brows furrowed as she felt like something was amiss. An unprecedented sense of peril engulfed Lin's entire body, and the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. Even the students who had fled into the distance were dumbstruck. The evil-slaying sword had once belonged to the Dark-Winged tribe, so who knew what would happen if it was left outside? For example, the Moonlit Night Monarch might summon it back using some kind of mystic technique. The turtle shell was finally showing signs of cracking. Seeing as that's the case, I'll cripple you first. The Moonlit Night Monarch's brows furrowed slightly as she gripped the air in front of her. Moonlight radiated from the night sky, and a long, pristine white scythe materialized in her hand. That's right, an extremely dazzling and rich green light burst forth from Lin's body. He possessed 6 divine flames and 1 holy flame, so he was extremely compatible with his fire god mode, thereby creating a 1+1 effect that was greater than 2. This had already become his most powerful self-detonation technique. Flames erupted forth. That was not the case. However, the power behind the Moonlit Night Monarch's attack had also completely disappeared. Little Xie is one of my people. Lin had tried this spell technique once before, and he was completely dumbstruck after witnessing its effect. He almost cursed at Tian Qinji from afar. The scythe sliced into Lin's arm, and blood splattered through the air. At first glance, it looked as if the two of them were evenly matched. This was the fearsomeness of a mighty figure at the return to Void Pinnacle Stage who had attained the power of the Divine Tao. Spell techniques were ever-changing, and they were impossible to defend against. Furthermore, each and every one of them possessed the power to severely wound or even kill him. Find a chance to escape, I'll hold her off. Lin roared to everyone behind him. Lin let loose an enraged roar. Evil-slaying turtle. The Moonlit Night Monarch ignored the fleeing students. Her target had always been the evil slaying sword in Lin's storage ring, and this plan had not changed in the slightest. All of the students fell silent in that instant. They couldn't even complain. The turtle shell had blocked the Moonlit Night Monarch's attack. F***CK. His entire arm had almost been sliced off by the scythe. The Moonlit Night Monarch didn't pause in the slightest as she disappeared on the spot again. Chapter 1111. The Moonlit Night Monarch, who had been split into four, looked at Lin's turtle shell with furrowed brows. Her body became insubstantial, and her true body, wielding the moonlight scythe, reappeared. The mighty sect leader of the 4-9 Immortal Sect, the renowned Lord of Transcendence, is acting like a coward here. Moonlit Night Monarch mocked mercilessly. Lin's hands, feet, and head had all retracted into his turtle shell, so he was naturally not going to be goaded into action. He charged toward the Moonlit Night Monarch atop his turtle shell. That's right, the turtle shell that was glowing with a dazzling green light was spinning rapidly toward the woman in the black dress with an extremely powerful force. Moonlit Night Monarch. The woman extended a slender hand and pressed it down viciously onto the turtle shell. Mystic Moon Divine Palm. The full moon in the night sky cast down moonlight imbued with the power of true een, which instantly materialized into a divine palm that fell from the sky before striking the rotating turtle shell. Boom! An earth-shattering force crashed the turtle shell into the ground, raising all of the mountains and forests within a radius of close to 10 kilometers to the ground. So hard. Moonlit Night pursed her lips with rage as she looked down at the green turtle shell that had yet to be broken through. She was just about to unleash a more powerful spell technique to break through the annoying turtle shell when the spatial seal at the very edge of the turtle shell was shattered by two extremely powerful bursts of spatial power. The Moonlit Night Monarch's expression shifted. Even though the spatial seal was only a barrier that she had set up casually, it was almost impossible for a return to void stage mighty figure to break through it without unleashing the power of the divine Tao. And Lin's team had such a powerful being hidden in their ranks. In the end, the Moonlit Night Monarch had underestimated the power of the divine techniques that Tina had attained in the divine mirror world. After breaking through the spatial seal, the first thing everyone did was to call for help from Papa of the Celestial Court through voice transmission talismans. The Moonlit Night Monarch wanted to stop them, but it was already too late. The only thing she could do now was to pick up the pace and snatch the evil slaying sword from Lin's hands. She turned towards Su Xiaolan and the others with a dangerous smile on her face. "You're not coming out to fight me? Very well, then I'll start with your friend." How could an opponent who could only roll around like a turtle shell protect his teammates? The Moonlit Night Monarch wanted to use this method to force Lin out of his turtle shell and stop her at all costs. She believed that within Lin's character, he would never abandon his friends. As expected, the green turtle shell began to tremble violently. However, to the Moonlit Night true monarch's surprise, the turtle shell didn't disappear. It only opened a hole, and then threw out an energy ball from the hole, whistling toward her. The turtle shell quickly fled into the distance. The Moonlit Night Monarch was suddenly struck by a sense of boundless peril. That was the danger of death. True Moon Body Protection. The Moonlit Night Monarch unleashed her most powerful protective ability without any hesitation. The full moon in the sky disappeared and instantly appeared on her body, wrapping her body in the strongest full moon. The energy ball cracked. An earth-shattering explosion suddenly occurred. Rumble. The blue explosive energy engulfed everything in its surroundings. It was as violent as a tsunami, as vast as the ocean, and as limitless and endless. The domain of the divine Tao that the Moonlit Night Monarch had unleashed was instantly pulverized by the terrifying energy imbued within the explosion. That's right, in the face of the Moonlit Night Monarch's threat, Lin didn't withdraw from his turtle shell state. Instead, he immediately tossed a deep-sea superbomb toward the Moonlit Night Monarch. The deep-sea superbomb was an energy core formed from two high-density water veins that had been compressed for over 100,000 years, then fused with the power of the divine Tao of Lan Xingyang, one of the most powerful beings in the Spiritfish clan. After being activated by Lin, this item could unleash a full-force attack comparable to that of a Tao integration stage super mighty figure. When he had delivered the gift, there was a note on the note that anyone who wasn't a Tao integration stage super mighty figure had to maintain a safe distance of 50 kilometers from this bomb. And Lin definitely wouldn't be able to maintain a safe distance of 50 kilometers, but his classmates could. In order to avoid harming innocent people, he had to get Su Xiaolan and the others to escape to a safe distance of 50 kilometers. What happened just now was the best opportunity. It wasn't an opportunity to surrender. Instead, it was an opportunity to launch an attack. Hence, Lin didn't run away. Instead, he maintained his turtle shell state as he fled into the distance in order to defend himself against the terrifying shockwaves of the explosion. The terrifying power of the explosion rocked the heavens and tore through the heavens. Heaven and earth within a radius of over 50 kilometers was engulfed by the boundless energy. It engulfed the moonlit night monarch, who was at the center of the explosion, and also engulfed Lin. Everything engulfed by the blue energy was pulverized. Not only that, but the area within a radius of over 250 kilometers was instantly transformed into a vast ocean. Lin, all of the students were knocked flying by the shock waves of the explosion, and they yelled out Lin's name. This explosion was far too terrifying, and they couldn't help but be concerned about Lin's situation. Tears welled up in Su Xiaolan's eyes as she gripped the inky black turtle shell in front of her chest with a concerned expression. "You should have told me earlier. If you had told me you were going to use this weapon, I would have given you my Heavenly Star dark armor." And Lin had forgotten about this because he was too nervous. Otherwise, he would be invincible wherever he went with his Heavenly Star dark armor and deep-sea super bomb. The terrifying energy was still wreaking havoc in the distance. Heaven and earth within a radius of over 50 kilometers had been transformed into a vast ocean. Bai stared blankly at the ball of terrifying blue energy and murmured to himself, "Did Big Brother and blow up his large water ball? Why is it so terrifying? Woof." No, Giant and Lin once received a gift from Lan Xingyang, the leader of the Spirit Fish clan. It's called the Deep Sea Super Bomb. He must have used the Deep Sea Super Bomb just now, Tina explained. She was aware of this matter. Deep Sea Super Bomb? Dabai drew a sharp intake of breath as he looked at the boundless ocean before him. This is the first time I've seen a bomb that can create an ocean. Woof! Xianyuan Cheng's body trembled with excitement as a scorching light appeared in his eyes. It's perfect. The perfect fusion of the power of yin and yang was able to create such a smooth and harmonious explosion. Everyone's expressions darkened upon hearing this. What the hell was a smooth and harmonious explosion? The power of the ocean divine Tao gradually dissipated. There was a beautiful green light on the surface of the turbulent ocean. A figure lay on top of a cracked turtle shell, panting heavily as the waves rolled up and down. His white robe was in tatters, and his skin was either charred black or cracked, all of which were indicative of just how powerful that explosion had been. That was way too terrifying. Even though I was far away from the epicenter of the explosion and had unleashed my body of the war god and my evading turtle technique, I was still severely wounded, and Lin spoke with fear lingering in his heart. For a split second, he thought he was going to be killed by the explosion. He wondered if the moonlit night monarch hadn't been killed by the explosion. It couldn't be that not even a speck of her remained, right? And Lin turned toward the spot where the moonlit night monarch had been. Chapter 11:12. And Lin looked up at the spot where the moonlit night monarch had been standing. The sun shone on the boundless ocean. The water and the sky connected, and the mist dissipated. There was nothing there. "It's over." And Lin heaved a sigh of relief as a victorious smile appeared on his face. The moonlit night monarch was very powerful. From the fact that she was able to easily break through Lin's divine body and force Lin to use his most powerful defensive divine ability, she was actually more powerful than the Dark Knight Monarch, Palace Leader Qing Li, Layden, and Shun Hao. It was a pity that she didn't even get a chance to display her true skills before Enlin ruthlessly ended the entire game. Little Xia, I fought the Moonlit Knight Monarch head-on just to stop you from leaving. Are you touched? Enlin pulled out his evil-slaying sword with a smile. The evil-slaying sword didn't bicker with Enlin this time. Instead, it merely replied with a cold and didn't deny Enlin's question. Enlin knew that the evil-slaying sword's favorability toward him had definitely increased significantly. With this in mind, tears streamed down his face. Only he knew just how difficult it was to increase the evil-slaying sword's favorability toward him. He raised the evil-slaying sword high into the air and couldn't help but praise. Ah, little Xia, your inky black sword is like the purest black under the sunlight, so pure that there isn't a single flaw on it. Your slender body is the most seductive body among all swords, and it dazzles me. The evil-slaying sword trembled upon hearing this, and it couldn't help but flare up in rage. Are you trying to disgust me to death? The touching atmosphere was instantly ruined by the insensitive Enlin. A faint smile appeared on Enlin's face, and he was just about to sheath his sword when a strong sense of danger welled up in his heart. Be careful. The evil-slaying sword also yelled at this moment. Whoosh! An extremely dazzling crescent moon erupted from the bottom of the ocean, slicing the entire ocean in half. Heaven and earth lost their luster. The ocean was displaced, and space was torn apart. The broken turtle shell that Enlin was lying on was also cut open by the crescent moon that suddenly appeared. In the end, the white moonlight, which was imbued with a terrifying sharpness, fell upon Enlin's evil-slaying sword arm, and the sound of flesh and bone being torn apart erupted. Amidst the spurting of blood, he saw an arm separated from the body fly into the sky, still holding a black longsword. An intense pain began to spread throughout his body. Enlin couldn't help but let out a blood-curdling scream. His body suddenly jumped up, wanting to catch the arm that was flying into the sky. However, a black figure leaped out from the ocean at an even faster speed and snatched the evil-slaying sword from a severed arm. When Enlin saw the figure that suddenly appeared, he suddenly came to a realization. The Moonlit Knight Monarch was still alive. She actually survived after taking a deep-sea superbomb. Not only that, the first thing that came to her mind after she was injured was not to escape, but to use the opportunity to sink to the bottom of the sea, hide her aura, and wait for the opportunity to launch the most fatal attack. This enemy was too terrifying. The Moonlit Knight Monarch's black dress was in tatters, and there were many wounds all over her body. Not only that, but she was also missing an arm and a leg. Her voluptuous wings were charred black, and her once perfect body had been reduced to an extremely wretched state. Blood mixed with seawater flowed from her body. I've won. The Moonlit Knight Monarch's voice was gentle as she looked down at Enlin with her sword in hand. Her eyes were as gentle as the moon, and even though she had been severely injured, there was not a single trace of panic in her eyes. Is that so? Black mist began to revolve around Enlin's body as his aura climbed steadily. Origin energy of the netherworld. The Moonlit Knight Monarch's expression darkened slightly as she sensed this astonishing aura. She didn't think that Enlin would still be able to unleash a mystic technique even after being so severely injured. A dazzling golden light appeared in Enlin's palm, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth surged violently before transforming into golden particles of light that converged in his palm. This was one of Enlin's trump cards, the god of war heaven blasting cannon. The Moonlit Knight Monarch could sense that she had been locked onto, and she raised her evil-slaying sword high into the air as she forced herself to take a deep breath. At a time like this, the best course of action was to forcefully interrupt her opponent's technique. Evil sword technique, dark ceiling monarch. A clear cry sounded. Whoosh, an illusory yet imposing black shadow appeared behind the woman. She slashed her evil-slaying sword toward Enlin. A vast sword might transformed into an inky black canopy that descended upon Enlin, imbued with an extremely powerful sealing power. Enlin's body trembled uncontrollably at the sight of this powerful sword technique. F*CK. I can't dodge this. This B*TCH's attack is far too fast, giving him no chance to prepare his god of war heaven blasting cannon. At this critical juncture, a familiar white light flashed in the air. A petite figure suddenly appeared, and she raised her hands toward the inky black canopy. Divine technique, energy source swap. A white halo of light suddenly appeared, enshrouding her and Enlin, forming an extremely powerful barrier that resisted the overwhelming power. Rumble, the space around them tremored violently. All of the dark energy that entered the white halo of light transformed into a gentle and harmless energy that filled the entire white halo of light. Enlin discovered that there was even more energy within the white halo of light that he could use, and it flowed relentlessly into the spell technique of the god of war heaven blasting cannon. He was astonished. Was she disintegrating the energy imbued within the moonlit night monarch's technique before converting it into her own energy? That was way too terrifying. The moonlit night monarch's expression shifted slightly upon seeing this, and she immediately spread open her wings and fled into the distance. She was severely injured and could only unleash less than 50% of her power, so she was in no position to engage them in battle. Hence, she was extremely decisive in her escape. However, right at this moment, an extremely scorching aura suddenly erupted from up ahead. The clear cry of a vermilion bird erupted into the heavens. A white holy flame slashed through the air, and it was as if a vermilion bird had descended upon the world as it hurtled toward the moonlit night monarch. Su Xiaolan had also sprung into action. Enlin was the one who had injured her, so how could she allow him to escape so easily? This sword strike was not weak, and the moonlit night monarch couldn't ignore it. She had no choice but to falter and slash the powerful holy flame vermilion bird in half with her sword. However, it was also during this crucial moment that she faltered. Boom! An extremely dazzling golden light erupted into the sky with earth-shattering power. Enlin stood atop his turtle shell and let loose an almighty roar as he unleashed his god of war heaven blasting cannon. Kamehameha technique. The earth-shattering energy cannon obliterated everything in its path with an unstoppable force. The moonlit night monarch was just about to unleash a spell technique when boundless grief suddenly welled up in her heart, and tears welled up in her eyes. At the same time, her lower abdomen began to throb with intense pain, and she was struck by an extremely strong sense of diarrhea. Not only was her upper abdomen wet, but her lower abdomen was also wet. The sudden and strange impact caused her reaction to slow down for a moment. It was during this instant that the moonlit night monarch missed the best opportunity to react, and her body was engulfed by the terrifying god of war heaven blasting cannon. Chapter 11:13. The golden pillar of light from the god of war heaven blasting cannon extended into infinity and beyond, as if it were going to pierce through the entire heavens. Tina and Su Xiaolan could also clearly sense just how terrifying this attack was. After all, the god of war heaven blasting cannon was a spell technique that could blast a return to void intermediate stage mighty figure into smithereens, so it should have no problem dealing with a severely wounded mighty figure at the return to void pinnacle stage. Sure enough, an inky black sword fell from the sky. The golden light gradually dissipated. A heavily wounded woman with black feathers fell from the sky. Accompanied by a few fluttering black feathers in the air, she looked like a deity that had fallen into the mortal world. Enlin was also completely exhausted, and he panted heavily as he lay on his turtle shell. He swallowed a 7th-grade immortal pill to replenish his energy and blood. Su Xiaolan retrieved her evil-slaying sword. Meanwhile, Tina charged toward the moonlit night monarch and slashed her heart lotus ice sword toward the moonlit night monarch, intending to finish her off. The moonlit night monarch suddenly opened her eyes, and she crushed a spherical object with 4 pairs of wings in her hand. A black energy barrier instantly enshrouded her body. Tina's sword strike struck the black energy barrier, but it was unable to even leave a single scratch on it. Everyone's expressions shifted. They didn't think that the moonlit night monarch would still be able to put up such a tough fight. And Lin was extremely depressed. He was already lying on the ground, but the moonlit night monarch was still able to fight? Was this woman a cockroach? Within the black ball, the moonlit night monarch stared intently at the evil-slaying sword in Su Xiaolan's hand. A chill ran down Su Xiaolan's spine, and she gripped the black armor on her chest tightly. Just as everyone thought that another vicious battle was about to erupt, the moonlit night monarch's black ball suddenly tore through space and disappeared into a spatial passageway. Tina's mouth gaped open with incredulity. She escaped? Su Xiaolan heaved a heavy sigh of relief as she held tightly onto her evil-slaying sword. That black ball is most likely the moonlit night monarch's life-saving trump card. She was actually forced into a corner. Su Xiaolan sighed with emotion. The moonlit night monarch's final unwilling gaze was quite terrifying. Although the enemy had run away, everyone still did not let down their guard. They were on guard against the enemy's return. And Lin, are you all right? Su Xiaolan flew toward Lin and picked up his severed arm. I'm fine. And Lin forced a smile onto his face. He had already taken an immortal pill, so his condition was stabilized for now. At this moment, everyone flew toward Lin with concern on their faces. Luo Zipping, Miao Tian, and the other lackeys all gathered around. Apart from worry, there was also a hint of reverence and fervor in their eyes. Their classmate had just chased away the renowned monarch of the Darkwing tribe right in front of them. How could they not be excited to witness such a legendary event? Can you reattach it? Su Xiaolan turned to look at Tina. Aside from being proficient in spatial spell techniques, Tina was also extremely proficient in healing. No problem, leave it to me. Tina patted her little chest and lifted Lin's arm. Then, she flew over to him and began to stitch up the severed limb. In this world, it was not unusual for severed limbs to regrow, let alone reattaching a severed limb. And Lin didn't get to experience the feeling of being a one-armed hero for long before his left arm was reattached. The next step was to lie on the coffin and recover. Kacha! The sound of space cracking could be heard. Everyone's heart jolted with shock, thinking that the moonlit night monarch was making a comeback. They all gathered around Lin and drew their weapons as they stared at the spatial rift with hostile expressions. A cold-faced man in a purple imperial robe walked out. He was slightly taken aback when he saw the people pulling out their weapons and glaring at him with hostility. Everyone was also slightly taken aback. They didn't think that Emperor Ziwei would be here. A heavy silence ensued. Emperor Ziwei turned to Lin and broke the silence in a friendly manner. Lin is dead. Everyone, Lin, the system god of war heaven-blasting cannon mission had been completed and had disappeared. But Lin was 100% sure that Emperor Ziwei was still on the list of people who hated him to the core. He's not dead. He's still recovering, Lin replied with difficulty. Emperor Ziwei nodded in praise. As expected of the small war god of the celestial court, even a moonlit night monarch was defeated by you. You've grown very quickly. He looked around at everyone and only unleashed a mystic technique to search for the moonlit night monarch's escape route. Unfortunately, Emperor Ziwei's brows furrowed deeply after searching through the area. Strange, why can't there be any spatial trajectories or energy fluctuations? Could it be an extremely high-level escape tool? Emperor Ziwei's eyes flashed as he carefully surveyed his surroundings, but he couldn't find any traces of the enemy's escape route. This was a little awkward. He couldn't just come here to ask if Lin was dead or not, could he? He had to do something to make sure he didn't feel awkward. Emperor Ziwei made his way over to Lin with a smile on his face. Long time no see, Mr. Lin. Long time no see, Senior Ziwei. Lin also greeted him with a smile, but he was cursing in his heart. Ziwei, you bastard. Give me back my inheritance. Ziwei replied with a nonchalant expression. The moonlit night monarch must have a strong motive for her sudden attack. Did she say anything to you? Lin shook his head. She didn't say anything. She just said that the evil slaying sword belongs to the Darkwing tribe, and that she wants it back. Senior Ziwei, do you know anything about the evil slaying sword? Now that he thought about it, the evil slaying sword was a weapon that Emperor Ziwei had left on Earth to nurture. Based on this situation, Emperor Ziwei was the previous owner of the evil slaying sword. Emperor Ziwei replied, honestly, I don't know what the evil slaying sword is either. I stole it from a Darkwing monarch I killed. All I know is that it's an immortal tool at the pinnacle of the immortal stage, but it's missing something, so it hasn't been upgraded to a divine tool. I thought it couldn't become an artifact because it lacked a powerful sword spirit. That's why I left it on Earth to tame and nurture it. Who would have thought that the Darkwing tribe would risk antagonizing Her Majesty Nuwa in order to take it back? Emperor Ziwei stared at the evil-slaying sword in Su Xiaolan's hand with a thoughtful expression. Now that I think about it, the evil-slaying sword is even more important to the Darkwing tribe than I had imagined. It seemed to have sensed Emperor Ziwei's gaze. The evil-slaying sword trembled lightly before flying from Su Xiaolan's hand to Enlin's side. Everyone faltered upon seeing this. This was the first time that Enlin had experienced the evil-slaying sword's reliance and trust, and he was extremely touched. Little Xia, you really are. Shut up. Let me calm down. The evil-slaying sword's cold and proud voice sounded. Air. This was the first time that Enlin had heard the evil-slaying sword speak in such a humane manner. Emperor Ziwei didn't take offense. Instead, a warm smile appeared on his face. Mr. Enlin, I haven't received a reward for your outstanding performance at the Immortal Spirit Tower, so I prepared a reward for you. Enlin's body trembled.